Your phone suddenly vibrates. A text alert. Nothing too surprising about that, but you don't recognize the number. You open the message, and there's no text, just a picture. A strange figure dressed all in black, with a face that looks like the skull of a dog. Who sent this, you think to yourself? Is this a prank? You try to put it out of your mind and go about your day. The next day, there's another message from the same number. You open this one to find the same dog skull-faced creature staring back at you. But this time, you recognize the background. Is that your house he's standing in front of? Now you're getting a little freaked out. Someone is trying to mess with you, you're sure of it. But what can you do? Another couple days pass, and you get another message. You don't need to look to know it's that same number again. You've been getting plenty of these over the last few days. You're really scared now, and you run out of the house to your car. You've got to get out of here. You drive, and while stopped at a light, you decide to finally check this latest message and see what it is. It's the creature again, but this time, it's a picture of him sitting in the back seat of your car. You put your phone down and slowly turn your head. Hi, I'm Dr. Bob, and this is SCP-1471, also known as MalO version 1.0.0. SCP-1471 is a very interesting anomaly that's not really a creature or a monster or even an object. It's a mobile app. It's 9.8 megabytes in size and is freely available in online application stores where it's listed under the name MalO version 1.0.0. There's no developer listed on any of the stores, and it seems as though the app is somehow able to bypass the normal application approval process and appear directly on the stores for wide distribution. Once SCP-1471 is downloaded and installed on a device, there are no icons, shortcuts, or widgets like you'd expect when installing software. It also does not appear on program managers, and once installed, it seems there's no way to remove it. Within 3 to 6 hours of installing the app, the individual whose device it is will begin receiving mysterious picture messages. All of these images will have one thing in common. Somewhere in the foreground or background is a large humanoid figure with a canine-like skull for a head and long black hair. This creature has been designated SCP-1471-A. Sometime during the first 24 hours following the installation of SCP-1471, the individual's device will start to receive slightly different images from before. These images still always contain instances of 1471-A, but now the locations will be recognizable to the individual. These pictures will be of places that the individual regularly frequents, like their local grocery store, their school, or their work. These sorts of images will continue to be received until 48 hours since the initial installation has passed. At that point, the device will start to receive images of places that the individual recently visited, like an image of the restaurant where they picked up their lunch an hour ago. Just as before, all of these images have SCP-1471-A somewhere in them, as if it's been following them and wants them to know it. After 72 hours, things get even stranger. Now the pictures received by the individual will be of them in real time. They might receive a picture of themselves sitting on the couch, taking in that exact moment, except SCP-1471-A is standing right behind them. But when they look, there's nothing there. It's as if someone is photoshopping in this bizarre canid creature, but doing so impossibly fast. Finally, after over 90 hours have passed since the app was installed, the weirdness reaches its peak. The individual no longer receives photo messages, but instead will start to catch glimpses of SCP-1471-A in real life, either in their peripheral vision, in reflective surfaces, or in both. At this point, the individual afflicted will continue having visualizations of SCP-1471-A in the real world, a result that so far has been irreversible. Individuals who have reached this extreme stage of exposure have reported that the entity appears to be trying to visually communicate with them, but none of them have been able to understand or comprehend whatever message it's trying to relay. Such was the case with a subject named William. William had first been exposed to SCP-1471 at 15 years old when his sister, Sarah, showed him an app she had downloaded earlier in the day. The app's description states that you will never have to settle for awkward feelings of being alone ever again. That MalO is an exciting and interactive experience that will keep you engaged and intrigued, and that after just a few hours of MalO, you will soon forget all about those painful emotions of disappointment. Neither William nor his sister knew how the app worked, but they assumed it was tracking them using some kind of GPS, and soon, William was receiving images from SCP-1471. The first one he received was of his school's courtyard, with SCP-1471 barely noticeable, sitting on a bench. He had black, matted fur, knife-like claws, a set of blank, pure white eyes, and a face that looked like the skull of a beast with a large, wolfish grin. William was immediately frightened by this, but Sarah insisted it was cute and funny. William wasn't so sure. The pictures continued over the following days, with SCP-1471 appearing at his school, at his bus stop, on his street, nearly everywhere he went. And then, the pictures started appearing as if they had just been taken the moment they were received. William and Sarah were both being sent the same type of nightmare-inducing images, and they tried to delete the app from their phone to stop them, but they couldn't find where the application was stored. Then, things got even worse. The creature started appearing to William and Sarah in the real world. William, as it turns out, was the lucky one, as SCP-1471 primarily appeared to him in reflective surfaces like mirrors, which he could cover with a curtain when he didn't want to see the strange dog skull face with its toothy grin staring back at him. Sarah was less fortunate. She saw the creature everywhere she looked, it always appearing just outside of her periphery, catching glimpses out of the corner of her eye, or feeling it looming over her and watching her as she slept. William has been able to cope with the appearances of 1471 even regarding it as a somewhat comforting presence at times. Sarah, sadly, was driven mad by the never-ending visions of the creature. Currently, the only known treatment to reverse the effects of SCP-1471 and the appearances of 1471 is to eliminate the individual's exposure to the images before 90 hours have passed after installing the app. Once those 90 hours have elapsed, though, it is too late, and SCP-1471 becomes a permanent presence in the individual's life. Thankfully, 1471 has thus far remained non-hostile and has not been shown to pose a threat to those afflicted by it, at least not a physical threat. All mobile devices that are found to have MalO version 1.0.0 installed on them are to be confiscated and analyzed for any potential information as to who might have created the application, as well as leads for other devices that may have been infected. Following this investigation, the device's batteries are to be removed and the device placed in Storage Unit 91 at Research Site 45. Additionally, all online application stores for mobile devices are to be monitored to prevent unsuspecting users from inadvertently downloading the anomalous software. Any individuals who are suspected of having downloaded SCP-1471 will have their device targeted by a self-uploading malware that can disable it until it's able to be seized by Foundation agents. Due to the unpredictable nature of the anomaly and the potential sentience of the software itself, SCP-1471 has been classified as Euclid by the SCP Foundation, and research into ways to hopefully one day contain the anomalous software is ongoing.
Dance failed. The young woman laughs as her date tries to catch his breath. The dancing rhythm game was much harder than he anticipated, and he can't help but also laugh at his abysmal score. He takes her hand and the two continue walking through the arcade. It's not crowded at all tonight, and the two have their choice of games as they bounce between the many pinball tables, driving games, and light gun shooters. As they finish up a game of air hockey, her date notices something. It's a door in the back of the arcade that's slightly ajar, the latch and a lock that should be keeping it closed hanging open. "I wonder what's in there," he asks. "Broken games? Maybe ones that let you play without putting in a token? Or keep spitting out tickets even when you lose? Come on." The two slip through the cracked door and find themselves in a dark room that doesn't look like anyone has been inside in a while. There's cobwebs and dust everywhere, but her date was right. It really is filled with broken games. He motions for her to follow as he checks out an old pinball machine. He presses the buttons, but it remains dark. He gives it a hard slap and nothing happens. How disappointing. They really are just busted old machines. The two turn to leave. They might get kicked out if anyone finds them messing around in here. They're back at the door when they both stop and look at each other. Did they hear something behind them? The young woman shrieks with fear at the sight of the old woman staring at her. This time, it's her date's turn to laugh at her. It's just an old fortune teller, nothing to be scared of. They must have accidentally turned it on. She didn't notice it before, but the machine which has the words "Grandmother Predictions" written across the top has come to life, and the inside is now lit up to reveal the animatronic head and torso of an old woman. The old woman isn't moving, but her glassy, dead eyes seem like they are staring right at the young woman. The two look at each other, unsure of what to do, when, without warning, the old woman comes to life. With the clicking and whirring of gears, the old woman appears to breathe in deeply, opening and closing her mouth as she leans slightly forward and back inside her glass container. The young woman steps towards the fortune teller as the old woman inside keeps breathing in and out. But then suddenly, the old woman stops. There's another loud click as a card appears out of a small slot on the front of the machine. She looks down at the card, then looks back up to see that the old woman is staring at her once again, as if the robotic figure can really, truly see her. The young woman slowly reaches towards the card as the old woman's gaze stays locked on her. Her fingers touch the card, and at the exact moment she pulls it free, the fortune teller's lights go out, and the old woman slumps over. "What was that?" her date asks. She didn't even notice that he is standing next to her now. He starts to search around the machine looking for something that may have triggered it, as the young woman looks down at the card she pulled from the slot. Her face changes as she reads it, as she goes from a little freaked out to completely terrified. "Hey, look at this," her date says as she quickly slips the card into her pocket. Her date reaches behind the back of the machine and pulls out a short piece of cord, one end attached to the fortune teller, the other frayed as if it had been cut. It's not even plugged in. "Let's get out of here," she tells him. She doesn't need to ask him twice, and the two leave the room, emerging back into the lights and sounds of the arcade. Later that night, the two are at the door to the young woman's apartment. He asks if she's sure she's okay. She's not still scared about that broken machine, is she? It's probably just battery operated and they switched it on somehow. The young woman agrees that must be it, and that she's fine, just tired. She gives him a kiss on the cheek and bids him goodnight before going into her apartment and closing the door. Inside, the young woman leans against the door. She takes something out of her pocket and stares at it. It's the fortune that was dispensed from the machine. It reads, "You look like you've made some mistakes. Some things are unforgivable, aren't they?" No way, she thinks to herself. It's just a coincidence. The young woman walks further into her apartment and picks up a framed photo. It's a picture of her several years younger, with another girl who looks just like her. Her sister. She thinks back to that night. The night that she'll never forget no matter how hard she tries. The night she lost her, and lost part of herself too. She sets the picture back down on the table before looking at the fortune she's still holding in her other hand. She crumples the paper in her fist and drops it in the trash before heading to bed. It's late at night, and the young woman is tossing and turning with bad dreams when she suddenly pops up awake. Did she hear a sound? She looks around her dim room, but nothing looks amiss. There it is again, though, a noise. Is it coming from the closet? She gets up out of bed and walks towards the closet, one slow step after another. She reaches towards the closet door, but the moment her fingers touch the knob, the door bursts open. She screams and falls backwards as multiple arms reach out of the darkness in the closet towards her. She screams and kicks at the arms as they grab at her, trying to pull her inside. She fights with all her might as she tries to crawl away from the arms. She manages to escape their grasp and stands up. She runs out of the room and towards the front door as the arms follow, reaching out of the closet, growing longer and longer, the sickening sound of bones twisting and snapping as they form new joints to bend around corners. Her hands reach out for the knob and she grabs it, just as the arms grab onto her. She's jerked backwards and falls to the floor as the arms drag her down the hallway. She tries to resist, her fingernails digging into the floorboards as the arms pull her back into the bedroom. "Hello? You awake?" The woman knocks loudly on the front door. "Come on, we have reservations. You have to get up." The woman knocks again, but still no response. She checks her watch and with a sigh, takes out a set of keys. She finds the one she's looking for and unlocks the door. "Everyone is waiting for us and I'm going to tell them we're late because of..." The woman gasps as she opens the door. She can't believe what she's seeing. The apartment is a mess. It looks like a bomb went off. She looks around, but there's no sign of her daughter. Then she notices the bloody claw marks leading down the hallway towards the bedroom. She runs down the hall, stops in the doorway to the bedroom, and screams. If you've ever been to an arcade, a midway, or a boardwalk, then you may have encountered a fortune-telling machine. These small booths containing an automaton are great fun as you receive a random card that purports to tell you your future or reveal a secret truth about yourself. There's nothing to it, obviously. It's just a random card you're getting after all. But the SCP Foundation has a fortune-telling machine in its possession that's both very real and very dangerous. SCP-517, as it is known to the Foundation, is a 2-meter-tall glass and wooden fortune-telling machine that contains a mechanical animatronic facsimile of an elderly woman wearing a white blouse and a blue shawl. On top of the machine is a panel with the words "Grandmother Predictions" written on it. Once per hour, the machine will power on if an individual enters what could be considered the elderly woman's field of vision. She will turn to directly face the person, seeming to stare right at them, before dispensing a fortune card from a slot on the front of the machine, after which it will appear to shut down and cease to function. It is unknown just how the machine becomes active, seeing as the only cord coming out of the back of the machine appears to have been severed. The fortunes dispensed when the machine comes to life are less a prediction and more of a veiled threat, and examples of ones received have included, "Your mother raised you better than that. I'm sorry, but fair is fair. Some people don't know how to be kind. You'll know soon enough, won't you?" And, "People who do terrible things deserve terrible things. You've brought this upon yourself, my dear." Following an activation of SCP-517, starting at 1:43 a.m. local time, the same events will always occur. The individual that was targeted by the machine will find themselves attacked by a number of entities which have been designated as SCP-517-01. These entities are long, multi-jointed arms that emanate from a location nearby the individual. The exact number that appears will vary, but there usually seems to be between 10 and 36. The arms will appear from a single location that's often a low, cramped, and dark space like a closet, basement, or under a bed. The arms will reach out from this area and try to grab the individual before dragging them back to the location where they manifested. They appear to be able to stretch indefinitely, growing as long as they need in order to continue pursuing the individual, and their many joints allow them to bend around corners or any other obstacles. Should the individual manage to fight the arms off or escape, new arms will materialize nearby the victim to aid in the capture. Once the arms have subdued the targeted person and gotten them back to the area where they appeared, they will begin savagely assaulting them, beating and clawing at them until nothing remains of the victim but a bloody pile of flesh and bones. To date, the Foundation is not aware of any targeted individuals surviving an attack by SCP-517-01 entities. In the event that the fortune-telling machine was activated multiple times on the same day, multiple instances of arms appearing will occur at different locations at the same time, with each group hunting their own individual target. Efforts have been made to figure out exactly where the arms manifest from, and during testing, cameras were set up around the targeted individual in order to try and locate a place of origin. Unfortunately, the arms somehow seemed aware that they were being watched, and the arms always emanated from around a corner or other place that was out of the field of view of the cameras. Tests on SCP-517 did reveal one piece of evidence, though, as fragments of DNA were recovered from the areas where SCP-517-01 instances appeared. DNA that turned out to be human in origin. The origins of the DNA and the identity of the owner have yet to be determined. Research and containment of SCP-517 has proven to be quite difficult, as evidenced by an event designated Incident 517-1997-M. As Foundation Agent Dr. Mail supervised the transport of SCP-517 to a new containment storage locker, the fortune teller suddenly activated, and it was suspected that Dr. Mail had become a target. Security personnel were alerted, and a defensive strategy was devised to protect her from instances of SCP-517-01 that were expected to manifest that night at 1:43 a.m. Dr. Mail was taken to a helicopter on the roof of a Foundation cafeteria and given the protection of multiple security personnel as they waited for the arms to manifest. Right on cue, the arms appeared in a storage area inside the cafeteria and began stretching their way towards the roof. Security teams inside the cafeteria opened fire on the arms, which took damage just like normal human arms, though they would quickly be replaced by more. More instances of SCP-517-01 began appearing, coming out from under parked vehicles and other storage areas, as the number of arms coming out of the original manifestation site continued to increase until there were over 100. The arms did not seem to want to fight back against the security teams, though. They seemed singular in their focus, to get to the roof where Dr. Mail was waiting. As the ever-increasing amount of limbs overwhelmed the security teams and breached the roof, the order was given for the helicopter to take off. The helicopter rose into the air, but the arms began manifesting from somewhere underneath the helicopter itself. The arms broke through the windows and pulled Dr. Mail out, passing her down to the waiting arms on the roof that then carried her through the cafeteria's ventilation system. A security personnel in the cafeteria attempted to sever the limbs with a knife and rescue Dr. Mail, but the arms are no longer ignoring their attackers and grabbed him as well, dragging him down towards the storage locker along with the doctor. In the end, 4 members of the security team along with Dr. Mail were pulled into the storage area by the arms. Their remains were collected the next morning, and the Foundation made their best efforts to separate and identify what was left for individual funerary services. SCP-517, which has been classified as safe, is kept in a dedicated containment cell at all times, facing away from the doorway, with an opaque black sheet bound around it. Following the events of Incident 517-1997-M, all testing has been halted, without the express written permission of the site director. Peering into our future can be a fun activity, even when we know it's all just a bit of make-believe. When you pull your fortune from a booth containing an elderly automaton, though, you might just find that this time, Grammie knows your fate for real.
The town sat in the shadow of a dense forest. The roads were narrow and twisted, surrounded by trees that blocked most of the sunlight. Even during the day, the town felt dark. The power grid was unreliable, so people relied on lanterns and generators. Life here was quiet, but there was always a feeling of unease that lingered in the air. It began with a farmer. He stumbled into the diner one evening. His boots were caked with mud, and his face was drained of color. The bell above the door jingled, but no one paid any notice at first. The farmer didn't say anything, just dropped a photograph on the counter. The picture showed a pile of bones. They were clean, almost shining, and arranged in a strange way. Around them, the ground looked wet with something dark and oily.
"Found it behind my barn,"
he said, his voice low, almost trembling.
"Coyotes?"
someone offered, though their tone was uncertain. The farmer shook his head. He explained that coyotes don't leave bones like this. And then the farmer shared a chilling detail. There was not a single trace of fur or tracks left behind. The room fell quiet as the photograph was passed from hand to hand. People exchanged nervous glances. Some muttered about predators, but others spoke in whispers about the old stories, the ones about the forest and the things that lived deep inside it. Behind the counter, the teenager on shift listened closely. He'd heard the stories before, but the picture made his skin crawl. When his shift ended, he stepped out into the cool night air, unable to shift the image of bones from his mind. His friends were already hanging out at the bowling alley. Greasy trays of nachos and fries were piled on the table. The rhythmic crashing of pins and the thud of classic rock music filled the air. He slid into the booth, grabbing a fry from one of the plates. He told them about the picture the farmer brought into the diner. His friends exchanged glances.
"We should check it out,"
one of them said, grinning nervously. The teenager hesitated.
"It's probably nothing."
But the group had already decided. They reached the barn under a full moon. The air was cold, and the building loomed ahead, a hulking silhouette against the night sky. Its wooden frame creaked faintly in the breeze, the old boards warped and sagging. It looked like the structure could collapse at any moment. They climbed over the fence, the flashlight cutting through the dark. The pile of bones was there, just like the farmer had said. The flashlight beam caught the oily residue glinting on the ground around it. The smell hit them next, sharp and metallic, like rusted metal mixed with something sour. They stood there for a moment, taking in the strange sight. Then, the flashlight flickered.
"Don't do that,"
someone whispered at the boy holding the flashlight. But the teen didn't do anything. This wasn't the time or place for pranks. He looked down at the flashlight flickering in his hand.
"I think it's running out of..."
Before he could finish the sentence, the beam sputtered once, twice, and then went out, plunging them into pitch black.
"Who's got another light?"
someone else whispered, their voice shaky. No one did. The group huddled together, the silence pressing down on them. Then, they heard it. a faint, wet sound, like something sliding across wood. It came from inside the barn.
Did you hear that?
Someone whispered, their voice barely audible. One of the teens tried to feel their way towards the barn door, but it was too late. Something cold brushed against their ankle, and they yelped. The sound triggered movement, fast and chaotic. The wet sliding grew louder, and a dark shape spilled out from the corner of the barn, moving in unnatural liquid motions. A scream tore through the night as one of the teenagers was pulled away. The others fumbled blindly, their hands finding nothing but air as the shadow consumed their friend. The sound of bones cracking filled the air, followed by wet, gurgling cries that cut off suddenly. Another teenager was yanked backward, their feet scraping against the dirt as they screamed for help. The group scattered in panic, but the shadow moved faster. It wrapped around another, pulling them to the ground. The last thing the others heard was the sound of something tearing, followed by silence. The teenager who had suggested the trip stumbled and fell, his palms scraping against the dirt. He looked up just in time to see a tendril of shadow lunge toward him. It caught his leg. He let out a blood-curdling scream as it began to pull him back. In the chaos, a boy who had stayed near the back managed to wrench open the barn door. Moonlight spilled into the space, and for a moment, the shadow recoiled, hissing like steam hitting cold water. The boy's eyes widened. He took a step backward and then ran. The boy didn't stop. His feet pounded against the dirt path, and his breath tore from his lungs in ragged gasps. The forest blurred around him, but he didn't dare look back. He didn't want to see if the shadow was following. All he knew was that he had to get to town. He had to tell someone. When he burst into the main square, disheveled and wide-eyed, his screams drew a small crowd. He tried to explain, his words tumbling over each other.
It got him! In the barn, the shadow, it wasn't...
His hands trembled, and his face was pale with terror. The people listened, skeptical at first, but the boy's panic was infectious. Someone ran to fetch the sheriff, while others murmured among themselves, their unease growing. By the time the boy finished his frantic story, the once quiet town had erupted in a mix of fear and confusion. It didn't take long for the rumors to spread. Some dismissed the boy's tale as hysteria. Others whispered that it sounded too much like the old stories their grandparents used to tell, stories of things that moved in the dark. Either way, a creeping tension enveloped the town. Night fell, and the power grid failed with clockwork precision. Darkness swallowed the town whole, plunging every home into silence and shadow. Families huddled together around flickering candles, their whispers barely audible over the crackle of flames. Fear soaked into every corner, every conversation. No one wanted to admit it, but they knew something was wrong. Then, the disappearances began. It started small, a neighbor missing from their usual spot at the diner, a dog leash lying limp on an empty street. But soon, entire homes were found deserted. No signs of struggle, no broken doors or windows, just faint, chalky stains on furniture, bed sheets, and even clothing. Calcium deposits that made no sense. The sheriff's office had no answers. The unease turned to dread. The town's sheriff wasn't one for superstition. He dealt in facts, in evidence, but the stories piling up were testing even his pragmatism. What gnawed at him most was the thought of his mother, living alone at the edge of the forest. She insisted she was fine, brushing off his concerns with a wave of her hand. Still, he couldn't shake the image of her in the dark, defenseless against whatever was out there. One evening, he arrived at her house with a small camera tucked under his arm. She fussed at him, but he waved her off.
It's just in case,
he said, his voice steady but strained. He positioned the camera on her dresser, angling it to cover the bed and most of the room.
See?
He said, gesturing to the blinking red light.
Nothing to worry about.
She gave him a skeptical look, but nodded. As he left, she stood in the doorway, watching him with a mix of amusement and something deeper, concern maybe, or understanding. The blackout came as expected. The chief sat at his desk in the station, the camera feed pulled up on his laptop. The dim glow of the screen was the only light in the room. His mother lay in bed, the soft rise and fall of her chest reassuring him. He let out a breath, tension easing slightly. But then, the room on the screen shifted. It was subtle at first, the shadows near the dresser deepening, pooling like spilled ink. The chief leaned closer to the screen, his pulse quickening. The shadows moved. They crept along the floor, climbing the walls in slow, deliberate waves. The camera's night vision flickered, distorting the image. When it stabilized, something new had appeared. A dark, amorphous mass, barely discernible against the backdrop of the room. It shifted, flowing silently, almost like liquid smoke. It slid toward the bed. The chief's stomach turned to ice.
Mom,
He whispered to the screen, as if she could hear him. She stirred slightly, her face peaceful. The shadow stretched, tendrils reaching out like fingers. One brushed the edge of the bed, then another. The camera's feed glitched again, and when it returned, the shadow was gone. And so was his mother. He bolted from the station, his mind racing. When he burst into her house, the bed was empty. Her favorite quilt lay folded neatly at the foot, her glasses on the nightstand. The room smelled faintly, and on the pillow, a fine white dust caught the moonlight.
Mom!
He shouted, his voice echoing through the empty house. The silence that followed was deafening. The sheriff stood alone in his mother's room. His eyes darted from the empty bed to the faint dust coating the pillow. He reached out, running his fingers through the powder. It felt brittle, like crushed chalk, and crumbled away at his touch.
Where are you?
He whispered, his voice breaking. The silence answered with its cold indifference. He forced himself to move, stepping out into the hallway. Each creak of the floorboards echoed, amplifying the hollow feeling in his chest. He checked every room, every closet, calling her name. Nothing, not a trace of her. Outside, the blackout draped the neighborhood in darkness. Only the faint glow of the moon filtered through the thick canopy of trees, casting long, skeletal shadows across the lawn. His breath misted in the cold night air as he scanned the property, hoping for some sign, any clue. That's when he saw it. A trail. Barely visible, a faint scattering of the same white dust shimmered under the moonlight, leading away from the house. It twisted through the yard, past the fence, and into the forest beyond. The sheriff hesitated, his grip tightening on the flashlight clipped to his belt. Every instinct screamed to wait until morning, to gather help, to think. But there wasn't time. His mother was out there. He unholstered his sidearm, checked the chamber, and stepped into the woods. The forest swallowed him whole. The air grew colder, the silence heavier with every step. The trail snaked between the trees, almost glowing in the unnatural dark. His flashlight beam bobbed with his movement, illuminating the gnarled roots and dense undergrowth that threatened to trip him.
Mom!
He called again. Ahead, something shifted. The sheriff stopped, holding his breath. The beam of his flashlight swept through the trees, catching fleeting movements at the edges of his vision. He turned sharply, the beam bouncing. Shadows flitted just out of reach, slipping between the trees like liquid.
Who's there?
He demanded, raising his weapon. His voice trembled despite his best efforts to keep it steady. The shadows didn't answer. Instead, the air changed. It thickened, heavy with a metallic tang that clung to his tongue and throat. The flashlight flickered, the beam sputtering, before plunging him into near-total darkness. He smacked the side of it, his pulse hammering, and the light returned, just in time to catch something move. It wasn't human. A mass of darkness slithered across the forest floor, pooling and stretching like oil on water. Tendrils unfurled, reaching out to the trees, the ground, and the air itself. The shadows seemed to feed on the light, pulling it in and leaving only emptiness behind. The sheriff stumbled back, his boots catching on roots. He raised his gun, firing into the mass. The shots echoed, but the shadow didn't slow. It surged forward, the tendrils growing faster, more frantic. He turned and ran. Branches clawed at his face and arms as he sprinted through the trees. The path was uneven, but he didn't stop. He could feel the darkness behind him closing in. Its movements were almost silent, punctuated only by a faint, wet sound. The house came into view. He burst through the back door, slamming it shut and locking it. His chest heaved as he backed into the kitchen, his eyes fixed on the door. For a moment, the world narrowed to the ragged rhythm of his breath. Then, the lights flickered. A deep, resonant hum filled the air, vibrating through the walls and floor. The shadows under the door thickened, dark tendrils seeping through the cracks like smoke. The sheriff backed away, his grip tightening on his weapon. His mother's face flashed in his mind, her soft smile, her reassuring laugh. He swallowed hard, raising the gun. The shadow surged. The sheriff braced himself, his gun aimed at the door, as the tendrils of darkness crept further into the room. The hum grew louder, a low, throbbing vibration that rattled the dishes on the counter and sent a shiver deep into his bones. He took a step back, his heart hammering in his chest. The kitchen lights flickered. The shadows pooled and swirled, stretching and retracting like something alive. It wasn't just darkness. It was hunger, sentient and deliberate. Then, as quickly as it had begun, it stopped. The shadows receded, slipping under the door and retreating into the night. The hum faded, leaving only the sheriff's panicked breathing and the faint buzz of the overhead light. He didn't lower his gun. He couldn't. When dawn finally broke, the town was a different place. The fear that had simmered beneath the surface had boiled over. Whispers spread like wildfire, stories of vanished loved ones, strange shadows, and white dust left behind. The sheriff shared what he'd seen, his voice steady, but his eyes betraying the weight of the encounter. His mother was gone, and no one doubted him anymore. By the following night, the town was in full survival mode. Every home was fortified. Lanterns were hung in windows, candles burned on mantels, and floodlights powered by generators illuminated yards and alleys. People carried flashlights and torches wherever they went. The streets, once quiet and dark, now glowed faintly with a patchwork of light. The townspeople organized patrols, teams of neighbors armed with whatever they could find to fight the darkness. They moved in groups, their flashlights sweeping through the shadows as they walked the streets. For a time, the effort seemed to work. The disappearances slowed, and the oppressive hum in the air lessened, but the relief was short-lived. The blackouts continued. The darkness adapted. It moved differently now, slipping through cracks in doors and exploiting the shadows cast by the very lights meant to repel it. A family barricaded themselves in their living room, the glow of a dozen candles casting long shadows on the walls. When the candles burned out, they saw it, a mass of black seeping out from the corner, tendrils snaking toward them. By the time neighbors arrived, all that was left was a faint calcium residue on the furniture. The patrols grew more desperate. The sheriff joined every night, his flashlight never leaving his hand. People shared sightings of the shadow, recounting how it moved with terrifying precision. No one was safe, not even the animals. The town's only dog kennel was found empty one morning, every cage open, and a fine white powder dusting the floors. The escalating reports of disappearances and skeletal remains caught the attention of the SCP Foundation. Emergency broadcasts, local news segments, and frantic calls for help painted a picture that could no longer be ignored. A mobile task force, posing as government safety inspectors, arrived in the town. Their vehicles were unmarked, their presence quiet but purposeful. The residents, too desperate to question, welcomed the strangers. Portable floodlight arrays were set up around the town, replacing the unreliable local power grid. As they worked, the Foundation assigned the anomaly its official designation, SCP-1471.
Hold the grid steady, the team leader ordered, his voice sharp through the comms. We can't afford a gap.
The floodlights roared to life, their intense beams creating a stark boundary. The darkness recoiled, pooling at the edges like ink spreading in water. For a moment, it seemed to work. The team watched as SCP-1471 stilled, its tendrils retreating from the searing light.
We've got it,
one of the agents muttered, their voice tinged with cautious hope. But the victory was short-lived. The darkness began to ripple, shuddering like a living thing under the pressure of the light. Then, it fractured. The entity splintered into smaller, independent forms, each one slipping through cracks in walls and beneath door frames. The fragments regrouped in other parts of the town, spreading faster than the team could react.
Fall back, the lead shouted. We're losing containment.
The agents scrambled, repositioning the floodlights in a desperate attempt to cut off the shadows. But SCP-1471 moved with unnerving precision, its fragments darting into places the light couldn't reach. One by one, the zones they had fortified all fell into darkness. The team convened in the mobile command center, their faces drawn with exhaustion. Maps of the town were spread across the table, marked with red circles showing the areas SCP-1471 had overtaken. It was adapting. They needed a new approach. The lead agent leaned forward, their fingers tracing the pattern of red marks on the map.
This isn't random,
They said, their voice low.
It's moving with purpose, circling back to certain areas. It's almost like it's protecting something.
A researcher flipped through the dossier of a local folklore, his brow furrowed.
There's a lot of talk about a heart of darkness in the old stories here,
he said. He went on to explain that some stories described a shadow that lived in the forest that preyed on anything foolish enough to enter after sundown. It sounded like superstition, but the descriptions were eerily close to what they had seen. The other agents scoffed.
Do any of you have a better idea?
The lead agent snapped.
We've tried everything else.
The room fell silent, tension thick in the air. The researcher continued hesitantly.
If the folklore holds any truth, this thing might have a central point, a place it originates from, a home base, if you will. If we can find it, we might stand a chance of containing it.
The team exchanged glances, the weight of the decision hanging heavily. Finally, the lead agent nodded.
Fine. We follow the pattern. Cross-reference every blackout, every disappearance, and pinpoint where this thing might be hiding. If it has a lair, we'll find it.
One of the agents tapped a pencil against the map. It was the forest. Most of the blackout zones converged near the old logging trail. It was the most isolated point on the map.
Perfect for us to walk into a trap,
an agent muttered under their breath. The lead agent's gaze hardened.
It'll keep picking us off. We need to take the fight to it.
Preparations began immediately. The team equipped themselves with portable floodlights, thermal imaging cameras, and motion sensors. Generators hummed to life, powering lights that would push back even the deepest shadows. Their movements were sharp and deliberate, but beneath the surface, a current of unease followed. Before they left, the lead agent addressed the group.
Stick together. No heroics. If we find its base, we don't engage unless we're sure we can contain it. Clear?
A chorus of affirmations followed, but their faces betrayed their doubt. As they stepped out into the night, the forest loomed ahead, its towering trees casting long, jagged shadows. The hunt was on. The forest swallowed them whole. The agents moved in tight formation, their floodlights slicing through the darkness. Every step was deliberate, every rustle of leaves underfoot sending ripples of tension through the group. The air grew colder the deeper they went, the sharp tang of pine mingling with something heavier, an acrid, metallic scent that stuck to their throats.
Eyes sharp,
the lead agent said, their voice barely audible over the hum of the portable generator strapped to their back. The forest was unnaturally quiet. No birds, no rustling leaves, not even the distant hum of insects. It was as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. The first sign appeared just beyond an old clearing. One agent paused, shining their light over a tree trunk. Deep gouges scored the bark, long and jagged, as if something massive had raked its claws through the wood.
Fresh,
the agent whispered, their breath fogging in the cold air.
It's close.
The team pressed on, the trail narrowing as the trees closed in. Their floodlights began to sputter, the beams dimming for fractions of a second before stabilizing. The air thickened, each breath a struggle as the metallic tang grew stronger.
There,
someone hissed, pointing ahead. At the heart of the forest, they found it. A massive sinkhole gaped in the earth, jagged rocks framing its edges like teeth. The darkness within was absolute, swallowing the beams of their lights as though the void itself were alive. Tendrils of shadow writhed at the edge of the pit, pulling at the light, testing its boundaries. One agent raised a thermal scanner, their hands trembling.
No heat signatures,
they muttered.
It's nothing. Just a void.
The lead agent wasn't buying it.
Get the floodlights into position,
he commanded. The team moved quickly, setting up the portable lights around the perimeter of the sinkhole. Each floodlight roared to life, piercing the gloom with searing white beams. The shadows recoiled, hissing as they withdrew deeper into the pit.
Keep them steady,
the lead agent barked.
Don't let the beams break.
The tendrils lashed out, faster than the eye could follow. One struck a light, knocking it off balance. An agent dove forward, catching the unit before it hit the ground. The shadow hissed again, retreating as the light's beam steadied.
It's fighting back,
someone muttered, their voice tight with fear. The lead agent pulled out a device, a prototype containment unit designed for anomalies like this. It hummed to life, emitting a low-frequency pulse that vibrated through the ground.
Deploy the array,
they ordered. The device unleashed a web of light, a lattice of beams that expanded over the sinkhole like a net. The shadows writhed violently, their tendrils snapping at the edges of the light. The hum grew louder, the air vibrating with energy. "It's working!" an agent shouted, their voice filled with hope. The shadows began to contract, pulling inward as the light closed around them. The pit seemed to shudder, the tendrils thrashing wildly in a final, desperate attempt to escape. Then, with a sound like tearing fabric, the shadows were gone. The sinkhole went still, the light holding steady over its surface.
status.
The lead agent asked, their voice calm but edged with tension. One agent scanned the area with a handheld device.
No movement, no anomalies detected. It's contained.
The team exhaled as one, relief washing over them like a wave. The lead agent didn't relax. He stared at the sinkhole, his jaw tight.
Pack it up,
he said finally, but he knew it wasn't over. As the team dismantled the containment array, the forest seemed to exhale, the silence breaking with the faint rustle of leaves. But even as they prepared to leave, a single thought hung heavy in the air. They had contained it. For now. But SCP-575 wasn't gone. Parts of it were waiting, biding their time, and everyone knew it. SCP-575 has proven itself to be both cunning and annoyingly persistent. SCP-575 is highly vulnerable to intense illumination. Containment focuses on maintaining constant lighting within its designated containment area. High-intensity floodlights and backup power generators are used to ensure no dark spaces remain. Its containment chamber is equipped with overlapping floodlight arrays, minimizing the potential for shadows. Automated systems activate auxiliary lighting in the event of a power failure. The entity's behavior is constantly observed via cameras and sensors, ensuring that any breaches are detected immediately. SCP-575 can split into smaller autonomous forms that regroup in complete darkness. While light disrupts and immobilizes it, the entity has proven capable of targeting generators and light sources to regain strength. SCP-575 has also been observed to mimic sounds and human voices to lure victims into its reach, demonstrating its strategic nature. SCP-575 has been classified as Keter due to its predatory behavior, adaptability, and the significant threat it poses in the absence of light. Containment remains a priority, with research ongoing to better understand its origins and capabilities.
The house is small, but cozy. When the realtor showed it to her, she couldn't help but notice all the flaws: the chipped paint on the doorframe, the missing shingles on the roof, the cracks along the kitchen walls, even the dented old mailbox out front. But even with all those imperfections, she can't help but feel this little house is calling to her. It's where she's meant to be. This will be a home for her. The woman knows, deep in her heart, that this is what she needs to start over. It's not easy. As she moves her things into the new house, she can't help but think about her failed relationship. Every piece of furniture, every knick-knack, reminds her of her old girlfriend. She unloads a heavy box from the back of her car, but she trips over the curb as she turns toward the house. She falls, and the contents of the box spill all over the sidewalk. They're old photo albums. She quickly shoves them back into the box, doing her best to avoid looking at them. But one photo, an old vacation snapshot of her and her girlfriend visiting Niagara Falls, catches her eye as it falls out of an album. She bites her lip and wills herself not to tear up as she pushes it back into the box. How can two people who were once so close grow so far apart? The rest of the day passes in a haze. There's lots to do, what with arranging the furniture and calling up all the utilities. By the end of the day, she's exhausted and thankful to fall into bed. As she gradually drifts off to sleep, she muses on her situation. Today was the hardest day, she tells herself. Every day is only going to get easier from here on out. Time heals all wounds. The next day, she rises early. The sun is shining, birds are chirping. As she walks into her new kitchen to brew a pot of coffee, she's overcome with a sudden surge of good feelings. This house has so much potential. She could learn to live here. She could find a new love here. The world is her oyster, and she's ready for anything. Yes, she tells herself, all I needed was a good night's sleep. Now, she feels totally revitalized. A little while later, she hears the mail truck arrive and depart. Looking out the window, she sees that the delivery person has shoved the little aluminum flag into the upright position, indicating that she has mail. She ties her bathrobe around her waist and, still cradling a mug of steaming coffee in her hands, walks to that battered black mailbox at the end of the walkway. "That's the first thing that ought to go," she mumbles to herself as she imagines all her plans to redecorate the house. Maybe she'll get one of those fun mailboxes that come in the shape of a wacky animal or a birdhouse. Something different, something eye-catching. Her old girlfriend never let her do anything fun. She pulls open the mailbox and pulls out a stack of envelopes. Still thinking about the possibilities for a new mailbox, she quickly shuffles through the letters, scanning the return addresses with little interest. It's mostly junk mail. That's no surprise. She just moved in, so most of her friends don't know her new address yet. But there's one letter at the bottom of the pile that has no return address. "Huh, that's weird," she says. It's probably just more junk mail. She knows that some advertisers don't leave return addresses as a way to pique a recipient's interest and trick them into reading their sales pitches. Nevertheless, she's intrigued enough to tear it open. To her surprise, inside is a handwritten letter. "Hello," says the letter. "I couldn't help but notice you today. I'm really excited to see a new face in the neighborhood. I hope you enjoy your stay here. Maybe we could meet later? See ya." The woman blinks in confusion. This must be a welcome letter from one of her new neighbors, but since it's not signed, she really has no way of knowing which one. It's a little odd, but, well, she's sure that the letter writer must have had good intentions. She pushes the red aluminum flag back into its reclining position, folds the mysterious letter under her arm with her other mail, and retreats back into her new house. Imagine her surprise when, the next day, she finds another letter in her mailbox. "Hi again," it says. "I saw that you read my letter yesterday. I'm so glad. I was afraid that you wouldn't like me, but now I see that we're going to be great friends. Maybe you'd like to get coffee together sometime? XOXO. P.S. I really like you." Okay, now this is getting a little pushy. That first letter was friendly, if a little awkward, but this one almost sounds like someone is trying to solicit her for a date. She's in no mood for that. Even if she wasn't still hurting from her breakup, she didn't know this mysterious letter writer. Where did they get the nerve to ask her out? Angrily, she crumples up the new letter and throws it directly into the trash. She looks across the hedge, peering into the neighbors' yards. In the yard to her left, a middle-aged man pushes a lawnmower across the grass. In the yard to her right, two old women are gossiping at the fence. She feels suddenly exposed as she realizes that the letters could be coming from anyone in the neighborhood. She hopes that maybe if she ignores it, the message will be clear. She quickly scurries back into her house and slams the door shut. The next morning, she finds another message from her secret admirer together with her other mail. The tone of the letter is more desperate, more wheedling. "I saw you throw away my letter yesterday," it says. "Why did you do that? Don't you like me? I really thought we would make a great couple. Maybe if you gave me a chance, I could make you so much happier than your ex." The woman doesn't read any farther. She throws the letter to the ground. This is going too far. It was bad enough that a stranger was hitting on her, but now she knows that her secret admirer is a stalker too. How else would they know that she threw away their previous letter unless they were watching her as she picked up her mail? And, even more disturbing, how could they possibly know that she had troubles with her ex? She stalks over to the house next door and pounds on the door. When the middle-aged man answers, she confronts him with the letter. "Did you write this? What's your problem?" she demands as she shoves the paper in his face. "I don't know what you're trying to do, but I'm not interested. I want you to keep away from me." "I don't know what you're talking about," protests the man, holding up his hands in surrender. I didn't write anything." The woman doesn't know if she believes him, but she has to admit that the middle-aged man sounds genuinely confused by her accusations. Maybe he's not the culprit. But when she confronts the neighbor living to the other side, she hears a similar story. "Are you sending me these letters because they're actually really creepy? I don't like people watching me," says the woman as she confronts her other neighbor. The old woman just shakes her head. "Mercy me, I didn't send you a letter. Why would I do that? I could just come over and talk to you. I don't know why you youngsters are always making up stories about weird letters." The young woman wonders about the old woman's final words when she's eating dinner alone in her kitchen later that night. The way that she complained about young people always making up stories about weird letters makes her wonder if this has happened before. Could it be that other young women have lived in this house before her? And were they victims of the same stalker? But who could this stalker be? It's got to be someone close. She can just feel it. At that moment, she looks up from her meal and gasps in surprise. There, right outside her window, is the black mailbox. It's hovering right at the edge of the window, as if it's shyly peeking in, like a bashful caller afraid of being seen. The young woman blinks and rubs her eyes. When she looks again, the mailbox is gone. She rushes to the door and throws it open. The mailbox is right there, standing at the curb at the end of the footpath, just as it's always been. Are her eyes playing tricks on her? Is the stress of her breakup and the mysterious stalker finally getting to her? The next day, she finds another letter. Her stalker is getting even more unhinged, and the messages are becoming downright crazy. The next day, she finds not just one letter in her mailbox, but two. Both messages sound absolutely deranged. Her stalker, and at this point there's no doubt in her mind that a stalker is responsible for these letters, has resorted to threats. "Why don't you like me? You better change your attitude if you know what's good for you. You think you're too good for me? What does your ex have that I don't? Maybe you need a real man to really show you the ropes." She crushes the letters in her hands, her face flushing with a combination of fear and rage. Who does this person think that they are? She can't take this pressure much longer. She's ready to report these letters to the police, but she still has no idea who's stalking her. Or does she? She can't help but think about that strange incident the previous night, when she thought that she saw the mailbox standing right outside the window. But that's crazy, isn't it? Her mailbox can't be stalking her, can it? If she tries to tell anyone that her mailbox is sending her threatening messages, everyone is just going to think that she's crazy. But soon, things start to get worse, escalating in ways that force the woman to confront that possibility. That night, she's in her kitchen fixing dinner. She turns from the stove to grab some condiments from the pantry. That's when she sees it. The mailbox. It's not outside this time, it's in the next room. It's standing partially hidden behind the door, again as if it's trying not to be seen. She drops her work and rushes out into the living room, hoping to catch the mailbox in the act. But it's gone. She runs to the window and, once again, sees the mailbox standing at the end of the walkway in the exact same spot that it should be. She's certain that she can't be imagining these things, but at the same time, what other explanation could there be? She barely gets any sleep that night, tossing and turning with unpleasant dreams. Several times she startles awake, sitting bolt upright in bed, half convinced that the sinister mailbox might even be in the same room with her, watching her as she sleeps. The next day, the exhausted woman rises early from restless dreams and sits on the front porch, waiting for the mail truck to arrive. When the familiar U.S. Postal Service vehicle pulls up to the curb, she stalks over and confronts the mailman. "Come on, hand it over," she demands. "It's my mail, give it to me." She's too flustered by this whole absurd scenario to bother being polite, and the mailman is in no mood to argue. This woman looks positively insane, he thinks. Her hair is disheveled, her eyes are ringed with heavy black circles, and she looks like she hasn't had a decent night's sleep in weeks. He has to deal with all kinds of crazy customers every day, and he knows better than to push his luck. He shoves the bundle of letters into her arms and jumps back into his truck. The woman quickly shuffles through the stack of letters, scanning the return addresses and throwing each envelope to the ground behind her when she's satisfied that it's not from her stalker. Just as she thought, none of these letters match the description of the blank envelopes that her stalker uses for his messages. She pulls open the mailbox and looks inside. To her horror, there's already a letter inside. She grabs it and feels the blood drain from her face as she looks at the blank envelope. It's another message from her stalker. Now she knows that he's sending the letters through the mail, but how did he get this letter into the mailbox without her seeing him? She woke up so early this morning, even before the sun was up, and she's been watching the mailbox for hours. It doesn't make sense that any of her neighbors could have planted this message without her knowing, but the only other possible explanation is that the mailbox itself is somehow writing these letters. She stares at the black aluminum box, the dark dented metal suddenly taking on a sinister aspect in the early morning sunlight. Maybe she really is going insane. Maybe she just misses her ex-girlfriend so much that she's imagining all this madness and just projecting her fear of being alone onto this mailbox. No, she doesn't believe that at all. She's going to put a stop to this, once and for all. The woman jogs into her garage and returns several moments later with a shovel. She doesn't know whether she's hallucinating or not, but she's had just about enough of this stupid mailbox. She wants it out of her life. Even if it's not stalking her, even if this is all in her mind, it's clear that there's something off about this mailbox, something that's putting her ill at ease. She starts to shovel dirt away from the base of the mailbox post, grunting and sweating with the exertion of her work, but not stopping until the post is loose. She grabs at the thick wooden post and hoists the mailbox, post and all, out of its pit. She drags it across the lawn to her driveway, where, with considerable effort, she manages to shove it into the back seat of her car, ripping the upholstery of the seats and spilling wet dirt all over the floor. She doesn't care about the damage to her car. She just needs to get rid of this mailbox. A chill runs down her spine at the thought of taking a long car ride with that thing behind her. She doesn't trust it at all, and the idea of turning her back on it, well, she doesn't know what kind of danger she'll be in. As she climbs into the driver's seat, she adjusts the rearview mirror so that she can keep an eye on the mailbox for the whole trip. To her immense relief, it doesn't move once on the whole car ride, even though her nervous eyes keep flicking to the rearview mirror to assuage her fears. She finally arrives at her destination, the city dump. She pulls up to the front gate and honks her horn until the custodian comes out of the guardhouse. She motions for him to remove the mailbox from her back seat, and the panicked expression on her face tells him that he should be quick about it. He's barely pulled the mailbox clear the door when the woman peels away, skidding along the curb and gunning the engine to drive away from the dump and the abandoned mailbox as fast as possible. After a few minutes on the road, she starts to calm down. She breathes a deep sigh of relief, a new sense of calm finally settling over her now that she's removed that awful mailbox from her life. She adjusts the rearview mirror to look at her reflection, wincing at the sight of her haggard eyes and blotchy skin. The stress of the last few days must have been really getting to her, but now she feels like she can finally move on with her life. She manages a tense chuckle at the memory. The whole idea that her mailbox was stalking her seems increasingly absurd the further she drives from the dump, but she can't help but feel much better. But when she turns the corner to arrive at her home street, she sees something that she cannot believe. Her eyes bulge from her head, and her fingers tighten around the steering wheel, her knuckles going white. It can't be. The mailbox is back. The same black aluminum box and wooden post. Of course, after all she's been through, she would recognize it anywhere. It's still there, in her front yard, at the end of the walkway. But she's certain that she just dropped it off the dump, right? There's no way that she could have imagined digging up the mailbox and lugging it all the way to the junkyard. Could it be possible that the mailbox somehow followed her home? Could it be that desperate for her attention and companionship? The woman doesn't say a word. She keeps driving, passing her new home without stopping. She can't deal with this anymore. She glances at the rearview mirror, one last look at the cozy little house where she thought that she could start a new life. But she can't live like this. She keeps driving, and she doesn't look back. On the corner, the mailbox stands still and silent, as if it had never moved and never will. Dealing with a stalker can be a frightening and dangerous situation, but it can be even worse when your stalker isn't even human. That woman never had to see the mailbox again after she left the property, but the SCP Foundation is very familiar with this dangerously obsessive romantic, which it calls SCP-1269. SCP-1269 looks like a perfectly ordinary mailbox situated in front of a perfectly ordinary house somewhere in Massachusetts. It is made of black aluminum, possessing a red flag and a white plastic post. It stands at 1/3 of a meter tall, and the house number of the corresponding property is printed on its side. It is unknown how long SCP-1269 has resided at the property, although dents and bruises on the mailbox chassis indicate that it's probably been there for some time. SCP-1269 remains a perfectly ordinary mailbox when its corresponding house is unoccupied or else occupied by a male resident. But when a woman aged 23 years old or older takes up residence on the property, SCP-1269 will start to manifest its anomalous properties. About 2 weeks after the woman moves into the house, SCP-1269 will start to manifest unaddressed romantic letters targeted towards the resident of the house. Surveillance within SCP-1269 has shown that the letters manifest approximately 3 seconds after mail delivery. SCP-1269's anomalous properties will manifest only when a single female, 23 years or older, hereafter referred to as the occupant, resides within the same property as SCP-1269. Approximately 2 weeks after the occupant moves in, SCP-1269 will start to manifest unaddressed letters every 4 days. The contents of the letter are romantic in nature and are targeted towards the occupant of the house. Surveillance within SCP-1269 has shown the letters manifest approximately 3 seconds after the occupant's mail has been delivered. At first, letters will manifest once every 4 days, but SCP-1269 will quickly escalate its obsessive behavior to the point that multiple letters will appear daily. The letters will become more obsessive and less coherent as SCP-1269's stalking behavior intensifies. When not under direct supervision of the house occupant, SCP-1269 will teleport to a location near the occupant and face them as if it's trying to watch them. It will always manifest in an area where it is partially obstructed, such as peeking through a window or behind some shower curtains. Sometimes, when the resident is asleep, SCP-1269 will teleport near the occupant without obstruction. SCP-1269 will not follow the occupant off the property, and all anomalous properties will cease manifesting if the occupant moves out of the house. Attempts to remove SCP-1269 from its location have so far been unsuccessful. SCP-1269 will teleport to its original curbside location after 1 hour of relocation. If attempts are made to replace SCP-1269 with a new mailbox, the mailbox will be teleported away with SCP-1269 appearing in its place. Approximately 3 hours after the disappearance of the new mailbox, it will reappear in a dumpster several kilometers away. Mailboxes recovered so far have all been found in varying amounts of disrepair, within garbage bags and covered in obscene graffiti, as if SCP-1269 has become violently jealous of any other mailbox it sees as trying to replace it. SCP-1269 has also shown similar violent jealousy toward humans that it might believe are vying for the affection of any woman living in its house. In a recent experiment, a D-Class male was moved onto the property with the then-current test occupant, a D-Class female, after 7 weeks of residence. Interestingly, SCP-1269 ceased its teleporting activity in response to this male presence, but 3 days later, the D-Class male disappeared from the property, causing SCP-1269 to resume all anomalous behavior. 2 weeks later, the body of the missing D-Class male was discovered in the same dumpster where SCP-1269 had previously disposed of rival mailboxes. The property where SCP-1269 is located is to remain under the custody of the Foundation, with one male researcher residing in the house to monitor the behavior of SCP-1269. Because of the dangerous lengths to which it will go to attain the current object of its affection, SCP-1269 has been designated with Object Class Euclid. It's our job to make sure it doesn't menace anyone else.
When the businessman hears the diagnosis, all color and sound seem to drain out of the room. His life, a deflating balloon, a lanced boil. He'd been suffering headaches at work, the occasional nosebleed. Probably nothing, right? Probably just stress. Until he collapsed on the trading floor, and not long after, was sitting in the roaring belly of an MRI machine. Now, the words just hang in the air in front of him, huge and terrible. Brain cancer. Stage 4. Completely inoperable. Less than 6 months. His first instinct is to thrash against the bars of this new metaphorical cage. Chemo, radiation, green juice, experimental treatments in South America. But he can sense a grim finality in the doctor's tone that makes him realize there's no point in fighting this. He's going to die, and it's gonna hurt. At only 43 years old, the businessman had felt on top of the world. He worked on Wall Street, brokering the kind of high-pressure trades that could make or break a Fortune 500 company. He was the first one in the office every morning, and the last one to leave each night, without fail. He's a closer. He gets the job done. Sure, he's never had time for family. Okay, he doesn't hang out with his friends as much as he should, and maybe he hasn't taken a real vacation since he was in his 30s, but he always told himself that's something he can save for his early retirement. He's got his whole life ahead of him, after all. Imagine the fun he can have when he's made the deals of a lifetime and gets to retire early. And now, his whole life is still in front of him. Just there's only 6 months of it, and he's liable to spend the last few intubated in hospice care. Flash forward a month, and sadly, things are so much worse than the businessman ever imagined. Even on the high-strength painkillers they seem to dose him with on the hour, the pain in his head is unimaginable. Somewhere between a high, piercing whir and a dull throb, like a dentist's drill is meticulously tracing its way across and around every fold in his diseased brain. It hurts too much to even scream. The pain tightens the muscles around his jaw, locking teeth against teeth. He hasn't been out of his hospital bed for 2 days. He's terribly afraid, the way things are going, that he might never get out of his hospital bed again. All those years he'd wasted in the office, and all he got from them was a signed sympathy card. Get well soon, like he'd ever get well again. It was almost taunting. He'd given them everything, and got nothing in return. As he writhed in pain in his isolated bed, he imagined them already filing the notice for his replacement, help wanted, like they were the ones who needed help here. Soon, luck smiles upon him, and another dose of painkillers sends him off to uneasy sleep. It's the only way he can sleep now, even if this kind of medication-induced slumber feels like waiting around in a kiddie pool when you need to be fully submerged. But this time, something strange happens. He's lifted from his shallow chemical sleep as though he's being levitated from his dirty bedsheets, taken to a beautiful green place where the sun shines, but it doesn't hurt his eyes. Then he's walking barefoot across cool grass that he can feel between his toes. It's the most connected to nature that he's felt since he was a child, before he moved away to the city to follow his ambitions at the cost of his dreams. This place is different. He's approaching a copse of trees, seeming almost to guard a huge bush of holly and honeysuckle within. Is this heaven? He thinks. No, even for a dream. This is too tangible, too real. He notices in this dream that for the first time he can even remember, he's not in pain. He's been delivered from his terrible suffering. An answered prayer. A kind of welcome tiredness hits him, like after a hard day's honest work. He lays down in the grass just for a little shut-eye. Even after a couple weeks in bed, this feels like the first time he's gotten genuine rest. And that's when the thought enters his mind. Not his own thought, but in his brain nonetheless. Come find this place, and your pain will be at an end, my friend. It's an offer too good to pass up, and when he wakes with a new sense of calm, of purpose. The pain is still there, but it isn't the dominant force. His father had once said to him, "A man can endure hell if he knows he's going to get out." And now, decades later, he understands what the old man actually meant. He's in hell, but that's okay. He knows the way out now. Drawing upon the last of his strength, he crawls out the hospital window. Lucky for him, he's on the ground floor anyway, so it's not too daring a stunt for a late-stage cancer patient to pull off. He can sense somehow that the wonderful place from his dream isn't far from here. He can run to it if he can summon up the strength, the willpower. And if all those 18-hour days in the office had taught him one thing, it's that he isn't lacking in willpower. So he runs. He runs barefoot across the blacktop, across roads where cars swerve and honk and call him crazy, across mud and grass and bramble. He must look like a madman in his hospital smock, running with holy purpose. But he couldn't care less. He knows the way out now. He knows the way out, and he's going to take it. Seconds turn to minutes, and minutes turn to hours, and he keeps running until he sees it. The dream becoming glorious reality. The lush grass, the trees, the holly, and the honeysuckle in all its beautiful, verdant majesty. He enters its presence and feels the pain in his head melt away. All the thoughts of agony and suffering, of how enfeebled he'd be when the intruder growing inside his brain saw fit to assassinate him. None of that matters now. He lays on the grass, more content than he's ever been, and smiles. Life is wonderful. Death is wonderful. Every sight, every thought, every concept, it all just drips with thick, sweet wonder. The grass and the vines reach up to receive him. They wrap his body, envelop it, weave into it, through it, become one with him as he becomes one with it. The plants engulf him, consume him. He knows it's happening, and he doesn't mind one bit. This is it, the dignified death that his cancer would have denied him, his happy ending. When the process is done, the plants recede. The businessman is no more, just an empty space where he once was. He is nothing. He is everything. Death can be such a bittersweet passage to a place the rest of us can't tread, but that passage is eased somewhat by an encounter with SCP-046, also known as the Green Relief. It's a cylindrical area of soft green grass also populated by a dense thicket of plant life, all tangled together into a large bush: white oak, European holly bush, and Kentucky honeysuckle. It recalls the fondest summer days of our youth, frolicking through green spaces that felt almost enchanted with all the carefree spirit of youth. To most of us, other than seeming like a visually appealing work of nature, there wouldn't even appear to be anything anomalous about SCP-046. This is not the case for anyone afflicted with a severe chronic or terminal illness, whose relationship with SCP-046 is likely to differ radically. You see, SCP-046 releases a psychic call to the severely injured and dying within a 50-kilometer radius. In their medicated dreams, they'll see the plants and imagine themselves laying down on that soft, cool grass and dying in peace on their own terms. And it doesn't just affect humans. Even non-sapient animals suffering from incurable diseases or wounds that won't heal will start dreaming about the sacred place. All these affected individuals will feel the need to make a pilgrimage to SCP-046, knowing on some level that it's the very last choice within their power to make, the thing that will bring them peace at long last. And before the Foundation discovered this place, it's exactly what they did. They sought out SCP-046, and upon entering the clearing, they felt the pain of their symptoms receding. They felt an odd sense of calm, of hope, something that they may not have felt in months or even years since their untreatable diagnosis. On feeling this, they would lay on the grass and let nature take its course. The Bermuda grass would grow around them, enveloping their body as a feeling of euphoria coursed through their endocrine system. A death, as their body spouts plants and melts gracefully into the collective, but not an unhappy end. A feeling of having been willingly reclaimed by the earth itself. There are no compulsive properties to the anomalous abilities of SCP-046, meaning it will never take anyone who doesn't truly choose to be taken. It's a way out for people who are genuinely doomed to be betrayed by their own bodies otherwise. People being taken by SCP-046 remain lucid and able to communicate throughout the whole process until they've been fully absorbed. During this time, they recount only positive feelings: joy, hope, relief, pleasure. They know what's happening to them and have no problem with it. Their bodies are completely broken down into nothingness within a 2-hour period, and their nutrients are absorbed into the plants. They have, in the truest sense, rejoined the life cycle. Because of the benevolent nature of this anomaly, and the fact that it cannot take anyone who isn't explicitly willing, it's been given the safe class. Containment procedures are appropriately measured as a result. The land has been acquired by the SCP Foundation and converted into private property, with several layers of fencing to keep it secluded from unauthorized personnel. The perimeter of SCP-046 is to be staffed by no fewer than 10 armed guards. However, those with life-threatening or terminal illnesses should be permitted to enter and have access to SCP-046, but only after passing a psychological screening period to make sure that they don't have self-destructive tendencies. This anomaly provides a valuable service and, as such, should not necessarily be separated from the public entirely, just subject to Foundation control and screening procedures to make sure nothing gets out of hand, because we can't avoid our date with eternity in the end. One way or another, we'll all end up in the dirt. Is it not better to become a part of the world that gave you life in the first place without pain or sorrow? Because that seems to be exactly what this unique anomaly provides. Now check out... Wait. No. Something's wrong here. These files. Oh no. Everything I just told you is only half true. These files were written by Dr. Edward Carter, a respected senior researcher at the SCP Foundation who also happens to be the project director for SCP-046. But the O5 Council, the individuals at the very top of the Foundation's hierarchy, have directly intervened and ordered serious revisions for the safety of all involved and the proper containment of SCP-046. Here is the true story. The first part happens exactly as before. The businessman with the misspent life, with all the achievements you'd read out in a resume, and none of the ones you'd want printed in your obituary, is told that he has brain cancer and only 6 months left to live. That estimation still proves to be optimistic, as he descends into a world of pain and weakness far sooner than he thought.
He still receives a dream telling him of a wonderful, perfect place out in nature where all his problems will disappear. He still climbs out of the window and runs, spurred on by his desire for freedom from all the pains of his disease. He still makes the 50-kilometer odyssey to the clearing barefoot. It's when he arrives that everything changes. He doesn't feel the warmth and comfort he did in the dream. No, when he sees the plants, he feels as though he's a puppet being dragged by invisible strings, a man no longer moving under his own power. The businessman approaches the plants and falls to his knees in front of them, ready to receive their communion. But his pain isn't about to disappear. It's about to get so much worse. The mold gets him first, spreading across his body with paralyzing speed, melting tendons and shrinking muscles. He tries to scream, but feels that bacteria inside him is wasting away his lungs. He's being eaten from the inside out by ever-growing colonies of microorganisms as the plants just silently watch without eyes. Then from the rustling leaves spews forth a cloud of buzzing, chittering insects that set upon the businessman and devour, eating him a microgram at a time in their teeming millions. They devour until all that's left is silence. At least, in the process of eating the rest of him, they ate his cancer too. And that's that. Another prey lured and consumed. That deeply disquieting little tale is the O5 Council-approved version of SCP-046, codenamed to them the Predatory Hollybush. The urgency of their intervention comes not only from what they see as Dr. Carter's misrepresentation of the anomaly's true abilities and intent, but also from a growing fear that 046's mind-manipulating powers may be far stronger than first imagined. This could even extend to a powerful mimetic effect on the very Foundation researchers tasked with keeping it contained. So what is this anomaly really? According to the O5 Council's version of the file, it's a malicious, predatory being that slowly and insidiously imposes a psychic influence on the terminally ill, the mentally unwell, and people with self-destructive tendencies. It appears to them in their dreams like a siren song, if they have the misfortune of entering that aforementioned 50-kilometer radius of the anomaly, telling them that it will give them a respite from their suffering. But this is a poisonous lie that will lure them into even greater suffering than even their disease could provide. But still, in the depths of their desperation for any kind of escape from the terrible set of circumstances they find themselves in, they'll heed that siren's call and make their way to SCP-046 one way or another. But according to these files, they won't find that sense of dampening calm described earlier. They'll feel a powerful, almost magnetic psychic force. The kind of force that drags an addict towards the needle or the pill bottle, what the French call l'appel du vide, or the call of the void in English. They won't lay before the plant. No, they'll bow before it, and then the feeding will begin. But it's not the tranquil, gentle absorption into the grass and earth. It's a violent and painful process, as SCP-046's prey is quickly assaulted by a mixture of anomalously aggressive black mold spores, flesh-eating bacteria, and anomalous unknown insects. This continues until the entire body is paralyzed and decomposed alive, where it then becomes sustenance for the plant. We still don't know whether the anomaly is capable of growth or if the extent of its feeding could potentially lead to an increase of the range of its psychic abilities. The O5 Council has no interest whatsoever in tempting fate and finding out. They have also personally demanded an immediate reclassification of the anomaly from safe to Euclid containment class, and to have the severity of its containment procedures increased accordingly. Under the revised rules, the land has still been obtained by the Foundation and made into private property, but the layers of security around the perimeter have been beefed up considerably. Multiple fences, barricades, and even lethal effect traps, such as landmines, pit traps, and electric fences with fatal levels of energy, along with a number of firmly worded signs stating that this is indeed private property and severe penalties for trespassing apply. Any SCP Foundation staff working within 50 kilometers of SCP-046 are given regular and extremely rigorous tests to root out both early signs of life-threatening illnesses and any potential self-destructive thought patterns. Anyone who becomes injured to any extent within this zone is to be extracted and taken to a hospital outside the anomaly's effective range, just in case it somehow uses the state of injury as a way into the victim's mind.
Any plants growing within range of SCP-046 are to be extracted and destroyed, the same going for any animals that attempt to approach it. Any members of staff who show an unusual interest in SCP-046 are to be treated with extreme suspicion, and then made to undergo a thorough medical and psychological examination. All alterations to the SCP-046 file are to be directly approved by the O5 Council, and anyone who attempts to make any alterations without the explicit permission of the O5 Council are to be immediately demoted and reassigned to a different case. Which reminds me. Dr. Carter, for his part, protested the revisions. He left an addendum on the file in direct opposition to the O5 Council's ruling, saying, "There is no evidence whatsoever that SCP-046 is predatory or has any desire to harm any creature unwilling to expose itself to SCP-046's effects. Suggest original containment procedures be reenacted and voluntary access to SCP-046 continued. No individuals are capable of breaching Foundation security once exposed to SCP-046. As such, there is no reason to deny afflicted individuals the opportunity for relief. Likewise, there is no reason to make this entity seem more hostile than it actually is, aside from a desire to portray every object in Foundation custody as dangerous. Some things must be contained simply because they are strange." Sadly for him, Dr. Carter's plea fell upon uninterested ears. In fact, his request actually painted him in a worse light in the eyes of his superiors. If SCP-046 does indeed have a mimetic effect on the researchers who work with it, then Dr. Carter has likely been compromised by that very effect. In light of the potential dangers of having someone who was essentially an unknowing double agent for the very anomaly he was researching involved with the project, the Council saw fit to reassign Dr. Carter to the SCP-1250 research team. In stark contrast to the extreme dangers posed by SCP-046, 1250 is just a selection of cassette tapes where the finer details of the content changes slightly with each time one of them is played. Though who's to stop this same effect on a long enough timeline befalling everyone on the SCP-046 research team? That is, if the mimetic effect claimed by the O5 Council is even real. Which leads us really to the parting question regarding all things SCP-046. Which story do you believe? Are you with Dr. Carter, believing the plants to be an angel of mercy, freeing the doomed from their pain? Or do you stand with the O5 Council in believing that 046 is a wolf in sheep's clothing, preying on the vulnerable in their lowest, most desperate moment for an easy meal? It's an answer I can't give you, so perhaps just let me know which side you agree with down in the comments below. In the darkness of her room, researcher Sims is rising off of her bed, levitating, her body a roadmap of twisted, black veins against pale, clammy skin. Her eyes roll back into her head as a trickle of dark, thick ichor drips out of the corner of her mouth. Something inside her echoes out with a terrible laugh, as though from the bottom of a deep and ancient well. The voice cackles in a dead tongue.
We are dragging rusty hooks across her soul. Her suffering will endure for millennia.
The surviving priest, Father McMahon, clutches his Bible and crucifix as he screams in mixed English and Latin. In nomine Dei, I expel you from this body. I expel you. One of the suffering researcher's hands jolts out and points towards the holy man. He feels a surge of dark energy assault his body, hitting him with every terrible memory he's ever experienced. The loss of childhood pets, his father being killed while away at war, lost loves, that hovel of a retirement home he'd left his mother in, where she'd spent her dying days screaming into the night. It's the worst he's ever felt, and the dark presence inside Sims is just getting started. Father McMahon is slammed against the wall with such force that he can hear one of his ribs crack on contact, forcing a red mist out of his mouth with the next panicked exhalation. Father Bridges, his senior in the church, is already dead on the other side of the room, his head twisted 180 degrees, blood dripping out of his mouth and down the back of his robes. His old wooden crucifix with the gold inlay shrivels up on the ground like thin plastic against infernal heat. If there is a God out there, and for the first time in his 2 decades with the clergy, it truly does feel like an if for Father McMahon. He's not in this room right now. It's only him whatever is left of researcher Sims, and it. Sims's head jerks back at an unnatural angle, straining her throat, webbed with those same pulsing, necrotic veins. When the words crawl out of her mouth, they do so backwards, but somehow, Father McMahon still understands every single one.
She belongs to me now, wretch.
A deep, guttural voice that does not belong to researcher Sims.
Leave while you still draw breath, or you will suffer as she does.
Rotten blood drips onto the floor from stigmata wounds yawning open in Sims's palms and feet, a mocking of Christ's state at crucifixion. Black maggots and worms wind their way out of the exposed flesh and wriggle up the possessed woman's arms, as though she's been dead for days.
All tricks,
Father McMahon tries to assure himself.
The demon is trying to frighten you. Have faith, and it'll all go away.
He tries to force himself up to his feet as researcher Sims lets out a pained howl that seems to shake the entire room. He sees cracks snaking their way up the walls like deep scar tissue. Cockroaches and spiders crawl out, teeming and filthy in their hundreds. Father McMahon does everything he can to ignore it all and read out the sacred rites from his Bible.
You are infesting a child of God,
He roars.
This is not your domain. Leave now, or suffer his divine wrath.
But at that, the levitating body of researcher Sims just laughs. It's a terrible sound, a carrion laugh, like wind rushing through the ribcage of a rotting corpse out in the desert. Her teeth have grown long and sharp, her tongue as black as the sin now infesting her.
She can't hear you, creature.
The voice in Sims says.
She's not here. It's hot where your little land is. Would you like us to show you?
Suddenly, McMahon feels beads of sweat rising up on his skin. The air shimmers in the heat. The skin exposed across researcher Sims' limbs and face start to burn and bubble. Her facial expression twists, at war between the terrible pain of the possessed and the sick, twisted pleasure of the possessor. But the latter is in control, and the former is just along for the ride. Father McMahon's vision starts to blur in the heat. He feels lightheaded, vertigo. His faith is his shield, but he feels the dark desires of that monster drilling its way through his defenses. It puts the most terrible thoughts in his head. Murder, violence, rotting corpses, war, desolation, mass death. It makes him want to vomit, but he thinks about his time in the seminary, Bible study, his belief in the power almighty up above. He can feel the tendrils of darkness coming out of researcher Sims, receding back into her body. His faith, it's working. He's pushing back the tide of oblivion that's taken root in this poor woman. He starts to believe he can win this again, the triumph of light over darkness. Researcher Sims' face twists into a grimace of rage. More of that tar-like ooze, filled with stinking chunks, dribbles out from between her lips, almost like it's the physical byproduct of whatever horrific spiritual reaction is going on within her body and soul.
You can't pollute my thoughts, demon,
the priest says, regaining his confidence.
I am pure in mind and spirit. What about your friend?
The demonic presence chokes out through the tide of dark sludge. Father McMahon feels something strike him in the side, knocking him off his feet, but it's not the psychic pressure from the possessing force that knocked him into the wall earlier. No, this was something far more cold and tangible. It takes him a second to process what's happening. He's just been tackled by the walking corpse of Father Bridges, his flesh mottled and gray, his head still facing backwards. From his dead mouth comes a constant stream of Latin obscenities, no pauses between each word. It's not as though the dead need to pause for breath, after all. He wraps his hands around McMahon's throat and begins to squeeze. Across the room, the levitating researcher Sims changes her orientation, tilting forwards in the air to get a better view of the chaos she's wreaking. Her eyes are jet black, leaking more of that thick, stinking tar down her cheeks. Sims's mouth is twisted into a grin that McMahon would almost be happy to die if it never meant having to lay eyes on it again.
If you love your god, creature, then you will be happy to go meet him.
The voice buried in Sims's stolen body says,
This is my gift to you.
The dead fingers of Father Bridges feel so deeply unnatural against the skin of McMahon's neck. A body moving but still devoid of life is such a profoundly disconcerting thing to feel, even after all the other horrors that McMahon has experienced today.
He has forsaken you, creature.
The demon taunts.
You're more my child than his now.
McMahon tries to struggle, to push back, but the body of what was once his mentor doesn't falter. He just keeps squeezing through his deranged Latin rantings as the oxygen deprivation starts to make McMahon feel so weak, so lightheaded. But there's one benefit to being pushed down to the ground as a demonically controlled corpse tries to strangle you to death. You get a new perspective on life. From down here, McMahon can see under the bed, where the source of all this pain and misery is waiting. He can just about make out the shape of Researcher Sim's purse, tucked away where nobody standing up in the room can see. And from this purse hangs something that we're perhaps all familiar with by now. A LABUBU keyring. It has tendrils of glowing, demonic energy reaching out from it, weaving through and corrupting everything nearby. A vector for forces beyond our understanding, beyond even this world. Trying with all the remaining strength in his body not to succumb to unconsciousness, McMahon reaches out beneath the bed. If he could grab that damn LABUBU, maybe he could end this. He reaches as far as he can.
Just a little more. Come on, only a little further. You can do this. You have to do this.
But can he? Before we can answer that question, we need to go back a few days, when all of this awfulness began. Because Researcher Sims wasn't just any researcher, she was a researcher for the SCP Foundation. Dealing with extremely dangerous anomalous beings was a daily occurrence for her, hardly something she'd even think of as exciting anymore. There was once a time when it still made her feel sick to see a member of D-Class personnel get swallowed whole, kicking and screaming by a giant reptilian beast. Now, it just made her check her watch to see when it would next be socially acceptable to head to the break room for a refill on her coffee. When it's your day job, even soul-rending horrors eventually start to become commonplace. That's what Researcher Sims would have thought before she became her own case study on the matter. On what seemed like a completely normal day, when Researcher Sims was overseeing a new data set from an SCP-106 cross-test, she noticed something strange occurring in the office around her. Not anomalously, necessarily, but somehow equally as bizarre. A strange toy had started appearing on different desks around her section of the office. When not appearing as vinyl standees on her coworkers' desks, it was hanging as a keyring from purses and coats, or as a tiny charm dangling off of people's phones. There seemed to be hundreds of different variations, from color to style, but certain details were always consistent. The squat frame, the furry skin, aside from the face, the two pointy ears sticking out on the top of their head, and the almost mischievous fanged grin. What on earth was this thing, and how had it somehow taken over the world overnight without her noticing? She asked one of her friends what exactly was going on, and got the response, "Oh, it's LABUBU, you get them at that Pop Mart. Everybody's got one now. Isn't mine adorable?" Researcher Sims did think there was a certain charm to the strange little dolls, but even more so than the idea of just having one of her own to enjoy on its own terms, Sims wanted to fit in with her coworkers. She had fallen prey to one of the oldest, malignant, anomalous forces out there, FOMO, or fear of missing out. It was decided at that moment she'd head to the nearest Pop Mart after work and get a LABUBU of her own. But this would prove to be much more challenging than she initially imagined. LABUBUs were completely sold out at the local Pop Mart. They were a high-demand item after all. It might be at least another 2 weeks before they could get another batch in. And even then, Sims would need to be at the front of the line if she wanted to get one before they were all sold out. So she did what any of us would do in a time of great desperation, delving into the shady world of online retail. She was able to find a surprisingly affordable second-hand LABUBU on eBay, perhaps from someone who'd gotten a double through buying LABUBU blind bags, as millions of gamble-happy consumers did. It was exactly the kind of thing that Sims was looking for, a standard, unassuming LABUBU bag charm, with brown vinyl fur. Sims didn't hesitate. She bought her LABUBU and worked diligently over the next 2 days while she waited for it to be delivered. She knew that her life would be changed forever, but not quite predicting the way that it would change. Time flew until her delivery arrived, and when the LABUBU was actually in her hands, she immediately felt an odd change come over her, that eerie, foreboding sense of impending sickness, like in the early days of catching a cold. Still, Sims was a driven careerist at the Foundation. She was determined to push through the odd feelings and show her resilience in the face of what seemed to be a minor illness. She didn't once associate the feelings she had with her new LABUBU. Ironically, had she been a little more paranoid, she was working at one of the few organizations in the world that could have helped her nip her problem in the bud. She began having strange dreams, sensing strange, dark presences standing in her bedroom at night, approaching her while she slept and touching her face and body. She'd run fevers or feel strange chills, even in perfectly temperate climates, and no matter where she went, she began to feel as though something was following her, watching from a distance, and every day, getting closer and closer. All the while, her LABUBU dangled from her bag, beckoning the hungry darkness closer. It even brought her comfort as the feelings of unease mounted, looking at the creature's cheeky smile, though Sims had no idea exactly what her LABUBU was really smiling about. Of course, it knew something that she didn't. Things started to get even stranger on one of her days off. She was taking a bus into town, sitting behind an old lady who was knitting a scarf on the seat in front of her. That's when these terrible thoughts started to enter her mind. A voice in her head that was not her own, suggesting that she grab one of the knitting needles from the old woman's hand and plunge it into her wrinkled neck. Sims was frightened by this, but tried to ignore it, figuring that everyone suffered from intrusive thoughts now and then. It wasn't the kind of thing she'd ever even think to act on. But then, it came back again, louder this time, more persistent.
Stab her. Stab her. Stab her.
Along with the terrible image of the act happening, it played in her brain on a loop, so constant and forceful that after a few moments, she had a complete screaming breakdown right there in the middle of the bus. It was only then that the thoughts calmed down, and she returned to her home in fear and shame. Perhaps the stress at work was getting to her. She called in to take a few sick days. They had plenty of other researchers at the site where she worked. They'd survive a few days without her. Sims thought she just needed bed rest. She shared her apartment with her mother, so it's not like she'd even have the burden of all the household chores while she was getting over all this. And so researcher Sims remained in bed, with her purse and her very special LABUBU sitting just underneath her, weaving tendrils of pure darkness into her waiting and vulnerable soul. Her body and mind began to change and warp over the next few days, her skin becoming veiny and sallow. Her words became strange and cruel. Her mother would hear her yelling the most disgusting things in the middle of the night. Sims's mother, a devoutly religious woman and a lifelong Catholic, began to suspect that perhaps her daughter was possessed. How could her innocent little girl have the devil in her? Something had to be done. Wanting to save the immortal soul of the person she loved most in the world, the mother told the deacon of a nearby cathedral about the awful things that had been happening in her home. The deacon, in exchange, promised that he would get in touch with some other holy men he knew who were experienced in dealing with matters such as this. Which brings us back to right now, Father McMahon being strangled by the animated corpse of his mentor, while in the terrible, gleeful eyes of the possessed researcher Sims watch on. The LABUBU is inches away from his fingers, and if he can grab it, he might be able to exorcise the evil and save the soul of the poor woman he was sent here to help. He reaches out just a little further, feeling the pain of every muscle and tendon in his arms stretching to their limit. He draws upon all his strength, all his faith, and in the decisive moment, crunch! His windpipe collapses, and his neck snaps in the corpse father's hands. Father McMahon is dead. His soul belongs to LABUBU now, just like that of Father Bridges before him. The demon in researcher Sims's body gives a booming, victorious laugh that rattles the room, though nobody but the imprisoned body of researcher Sims is even really there to hear it anymore. But the rumbling of the demon's laugh isn't the only sound ringing out through the apartment building where researcher Sims and her mother lived. There's also the heavy-booted footsteps thundering up the stairwell and down the hall towards the room where it's all happening. One of those tactical work boots kicks open the door, and a number of mobile task force operatives with assault rifles pour into the room. Their armor has been augmented by sacred warning runes and anti-demonic technology, perfected over decades of Foundation exorcism operations for scenarios exactly like this. The demon possessing Researcher Sims gives a terrible roar and points towards the mobile task force. The backwards-facing Father Bridges gets up, with the crushed throat Father McMahon, yet another puppet of the monstrous force in the room. Both run towards the invaders, chanting in Latin with mouths that drip black slime. The mobile task force opens fire, unleashing a hail of silver-cased, holy water-infused bullets that rip the two undead fiends to shreds. The monsters are relentless, but the mobile task force has deep magazines. They fire until there's nothing left to get up. But when the squad leader shouts, "Clear!" and the men lower their weapons, the room is devoid of all life except for them. In their zeal to take down the attacking corpses, they've also peppered the possessed body of Researcher Sims with holy bullets. She's breathing her last gasps in the corner, little more than a shell of her former self now. Researcher Sims's colleagues, the few of them that could get the time off, attend her funeral. It seemed like she had a bright career at the Foundation ahead of her, surviving research assignments for everything from SCP-106, the Old Man, to SCP-682, the hard-to-destroy reptile. And yet, death still came for her, as it does for us all, just a hell of a lot earlier than anyone expected. As the coffin is lowered into the earth, there's a silent understanding between all the Foundation staff in attendance. Whatever had been the cause of Researcher Sims's death, it was anything but natural. And stranger still, they already had an inclination of what had been behind it all. 70 miles away, at a secure Foundation containment facility, scientists and guards work around the clock to secure the containment of their latest anomaly, the vacant-eyed, grinning LABUBU doll that was hanging off of Sims's handbag when she first started manifesting symptoms of her apparent possession. When they scanned all of Sims's personal effects, they found that her LABUBU had an extraordinary Hume level, indicating a reality-warping effect was at play. When one of the field agents touched it, he immediately felt himself getting a headache, an uncomfortable, nauseating thrumming deep in the base of his skull. The coppery taste of blood on his tongue, a terribly malevolent aura was oozing out of that LABUBU, and it needed to be put under lock and key and surrounded by Scranton reality anchors as quickly as possible. The researcher, once a friend of Sim's, stared at the grinning plastic hobgoblin behind the containment glass, and a creeping unease took hold of him. Was this anomaly a demonic entity attached to the one LABUBU that Researcher Sims was unlucky enough to buy online? Or was it all of them? When the police found Allison, she'd already starved to death, about 6 feet from a fridge full of fresh food. Stranger still, she was crawling out of the kitchen when she collapsed, succumbing to the toll that weeks without a meal had taken on her body. Why didn't she just grab a bite to eat? Now, her house is an ant's nest of CSI technicians and beat cops. There's no sign of forced entry, but in a small town like this, mysterious deaths are big news, and the town has never seen a death more mysterious than this. As crime scene photographers, unsure of whether this even counts as a crime scene, take photos of the body and the surrounding rooms, a deputy prattles off Allison's medical history. No sign of mental illness on her record, or treatment for eating disorders in particular. No GI disorders, no history of drug use. The detective, standing in the middle of the shifting crowd, just stares down at Allison's body. She's horrifically thin, every bone visible underneath her pulled tight gray skin. There's a fly crawling across her eyeball already. Nothing about this seems to add up. "Do you think she was starved somewhere else and then dumped here?" the deputy asks. The detective shrugs. "Seems like a lot of trouble to go through. If someone did kill her like that, they must have really hated her guts." Their musings are interrupted by someone laughing, not exactly the most tactful behavior within earshot of a corpse. The detective turns and sees that it's one of the beat cops, standing next to the fridge and looking closer at the piece of paper stuck on the upper freezer compartment. You could say it's art, by some juvenile definition. A water-damaged piece of mixed media, felt tip and ballpoint pen, depicting some mountains, a house, a well, a dog, a smiling sun in the background, and a man dressed like a chef. Whoever drew it wouldn't have been any older than 10. The detective shakes his head. "Show some respect, man." The beat cop tries to stifle his laughter and points at the drawing. "Sorry, boss, I was just admiring little Rembrandt's work over here." That gets a laugh out of some of the CSI techs dusting the kitchen counter. They'd already started feeling like coming out here was a waste of time. Clearly, what they're looking at is just some tragic accident, not something that requires a thorough investigation. One of them plucks up enough courage to say, "Maybe the crime we should be investigating here is who stole that piece from the Louvre." More laughter from everyone but the detective, who seemingly takes his job a hell of a lot more seriously than all of his colleagues. After all, starving to death is a horrible way to go. In the following hours, things move fast, but the detective finds that his eyes keep wandering back to the refrigerator drawing. The coroners arrive and cart away Allison's body for an autopsy. Crime scene photographers capture every room in the house. The beat cops and the CSI techs all file out and clock off. It isn't long before all that's left is the detective and the deputy. "You want my read, boss?" the deputy says, zipping up his coat. "She just snapped. Life's stressful, you know? Can make people do crazy things. She must have just, decided to stop eating. Let nature take its course." The detective is percolating on a strange idea himself. "Does she have any kids?" The deputy shakes his head. If she did, they would have been home by now. "Nieces? Nephews?" "Only child, according to my research, boss." The detective narrows his eyes at the fridge. "Then who drew that?" he asks. And the deputy doesn't have an answer. With gloved hands, he carefully peels the drawing off of the fridge, folds it, and slides it into an evidence bag. They've found out all they can for one day, and there are still so many horrible things to discover. Later that night, after hours stuck in traffic, the beat cop arrives home to his one-bedroom apartment. He's excited to get back to his real place when Sandra comes to her senses again and lets him back in. Sure, he slept around a little. Sure, he drank a little too much sometimes. But what can you expect? The beat's a stressful job. A man needs his releases. He heads inside and closes the door behind him, chuckling to himself about that Rembrandt zinger from earlier. "Great work, Arnie," he thinks. "Funny and cultured. Is there anything you can't do?" But the glow doesn't stick around for long. He's alone in the apartment, he thinks. It's strange. He's always thought of himself as the courageous type, but every shadowed corner, every open doorway, seems to portend some dark mystery. Is there someone in his apartment, waiting for him? The beat cop isn't the type to take chances. He's been known to be a little jumpy on the job. That had gotten him a slap on the wrist before, but it doesn't stop him drawing his service weapon and sweeping from room to room, all three of them, checking for intruders. "I'm an armed police officer," he says aloud. "If anybody's in here, this is your one chance to give yourself up. I will use lethal force." Nothing. Just empty rooms. Why is he so paranoid tonight? Must be getting sick or something. Could be all that job stress again. He decides to go to bed without dinner, maybe have a lay-in the next morning, until the grumbling of his stomach wakes him up in the middle of the night and drags him out into the kitchen. The beat cop still brings his service weapon with him, even in his sleep shirt and boxers. He still can't shake that feeling that something is wrong in his apartment tonight. And in a way, he's right. Just not the way he thinks. He checks the fridge. No groceries, of course. He hasn't settled in that much yet, but he does still have half a hoagie wrapped in aluminum foil, perfect for a late-night snack. But as he takes a bite of the cold, leftover sandwich, he feels a terrible pain shoot through his abdomen, like a blade lancing straight into his back. The beat cop lets out a terrible scream as his kitchen's tiled floor leaps up to meet him. But the detective won't find out what happened to the beat cop for a few days. He's still on the case of Allison's mysterious death, and that's what brings him to the coroner's office to see the results of the unfortunate woman's autopsy. Allison's laid out across the slab, a thin sheet, at least letting her maintain some kind of dignity in death. The coroner is closely studying his clipboard. "Terrible way to die, starvation," he says. "She hadn't eaten in 3 whole weeks. Used up her glycogen reserves, then her body started eating into its own muscles. Nausea, vomiting, decreased brain function and immune system. Seems like a heart attack is what actually did her in, after all the stress she put her body through." The detective, who'd seen some of the most awful things one person can do to another, still has to suppress a shudder at the thought. How could a person possibly let themselves die like that? "Anything that would indicate she was kidnapped and being held against her will, Doc?" the detective asks. "Defensive wounds, bruises, ligature marks?" The coroner shakes his head. "Nope, nothing like that," he says. "There was something a little strange, though. Her liver seemed almost like it was missing a piece, like it was surgically extracted. Same with her gallbladder, but
that's not consistent with her medical history, and I didn't find any surgical scars on her body either. Now that is strange.
The detective makes a note of it immediately, thanks the coroner, and starts to leave when he's stopped once more on the way out.
Oh, Detective, I almost forgot, the coroner says. She had some torn paper underneath her nails. Couldn't quite make out what it was, though. The particulates were too small.
The detective makes a note of that, too. All these pieces falling onto the board, but how do any of them fit together? He doesn't know that yet. Back at the station, things are equally chaotic. A number of people have called in sick with various ailments, so the detective needs to pull double duty fixing up other people's work. But as he's cataloging evidence and filing paperwork, he's still filing all the details away in his head. Nothing indicating that someone else had done this to her. Strange damage to some of her internal organs, paper underneath her fingernails. And still, beyond it all, a woman starved to death next to a fridge full of food, crawling away from it at the very moment of her death, rather than going for the sustenance that would have saved her. With so much that's strange and disturbing about this case, why can't he stop thinking about the drawing on the fridge? The one that had no earthly reason to be there. Meanwhile, across town, a woman is bringing home a car full of groceries. Her hubby, a certain CSI tech, had to call in sick today. He had the most terrible pain in his abdomen. Must be how hard he works, she figured. Stress ulcers, maybe? That's why she just left him home to eat snacks and watch TV while she ran the household errands. But she has no idea what's waiting for her when she gets back home. She's walking across the threshold with her arms filled with big brown shopping bags when she hears the groaning coming from the living room. Pained and guttural, but also oddly hollow, like the noise a wounded animal might make. She heads in to investigate, seeing her CSI husband sprawled across the couch and screams in horror. The grocery bags hit the floor and spill out everywhere. He's staring up at the ceiling, groaning through an empty mouth. His tongue is gone, disappeared. Just a vacant black tunnel all the way down his throat. The same could be said for his eyes, replaced by two empty black sockets. Meanwhile, the detective is following up on a lead. He arrives at the house of Allison's mother. Apparently they were close, and from the redness of her eyes, he can tell that she's still grieving for her daughter's terrible death. They sit at the mother's kitchen table over cups of coffee. She explains that none of this makes sense to her. Her daughter had only just moved into the home and she seemed so happy. Allison had just gotten out of a bad relationship and was excited to be getting her own place with a new sense of independence. She'd only just had the new fridge installed. The detective stops her there. Allison had mentioned the fridge specifically. Her mother gives a tearful nod.
She found it on Facebook Marketplace, she said. It had the exact kind of retro vibe she was looking for, a Crosley Shelvador. They're actually very rare these days.
It's all starting to connect. Everything is fine. Allison is happy. Then she buys a new fridge, and she's dead from starvation under mysterious circumstances within 3 weeks? That fridge. He knows it has something to do with this, and if he wants any answers, he has to go back and take a closer look. The detective arrives back at Allison's home as the sun is setting and darkness is creeping in. He walks in, alone, and makes a beeline for the kitchen where the fridge is waiting. And strangely, he sees that the drawing he saw his deputy peel off of that fridge with his own 2 eyes, is still there, fixed to the upper compartment. Something's wrong here, and it really doesn't take a detective to figure that much out. Nursing a sense of deep, gnawing unease, he approaches the fridge and opens the door, not sure what to expect on the other side. But the one thing he wasn't anticipating was 4 different brown paper bags, stacked neatly in the otherwise empty fridge. Each one has the name Eric scrawled onto them with a black marker in the exact same handwriting. The detective knows better than to touch any of them, of course. He calls for backup immediately, and it isn't long before the paper bags are being studied at a nearby forensic lab affiliated with the station. The contents of each bag, which a lab tech slowly empties out in front of him, is pretty much exactly the same. A Ziploc bag containing 3 chocolate chip cookies, a note that reads, "Be a good boy today," written in the exact same handwriting as the Eric written on each bag's exterior, a white bread sandwich with the crusts cut off and a strange mix of flesh and viscera inside, and another Ziploc bag, filled with more miscellaneous meat and viscera.
Naturally, they conduct DNA tests on the meat inside the sandwiches, and it doesn't take long to determine that the meat in question is human. More specific DNA testing would reveal that the meat came from the beat cop, the CSI tech, and the unfortunate deputy who'd removed the drawing from the fridge for the first time under the detective's orders. By now, all three of them are dead. They just haven't been discovered yet. And they won't be, at least not by our detective, who's gotten so admirably close to figuring the whole thing out. His investigation will soon be taken from him by men claiming to be FBI, who will ask him about everyone who has a working knowledge of the case. Then, the detective and everyone he named will have their memories wiped. Because the unfortunate death of Allison and all the others are now just footnotes in the SCP Foundation file for SCP-683, Refrigerator Art. After everything you just heard, it's only natural for you to have questions, and I can promise I'll have answers for at least some of them. Why did all those people die? And why did Allison starve while all the others had their flesh and organs stolen for those macabre sack lunches? The truth is, they all had one thing in common. They either attempted to remove or verbalized an insulting thought towards the drawing on the anomalous SCP-683 refrigerator. Doing either of these things will immediately activate the primary effect of the frightening fridge. The next time you try to eat, every bite you take will instantaneously result in an equal amount of body mass being removed by unknown means. The process is extremely painful when it happens, but the parts you'll lose won't kill you until you've met the threshold of losing exactly 0.42 kilograms of flesh, organs, or even skin. Then you're definitely dead, and it will be slow and agonizing. To the best of our knowledge, once the process is initiated, there's actually no way to stop it. Well, there's no way to stop it and live anyway, because the only way you can buy yourself more time is simply choosing not to eat. That's the option that poor Allison chose after experiencing the excruciating pain of her first couple of bites. She lived a couple weeks longer than most people who fall victim to SCP-683, but given that she spent those weeks slowly starving to death while becoming increasingly aware that her new retro fridge has murdered her, it's really in the eye of the beholder whether that's a better way to go. You may have already gathered what will happen to your missing viscera if you choose not to starve to death. The meat is transposed into the mysterious sack lunches, packed into sandwiches with the remainder inside a Ziploc bag, a nutritious lunch for the Eric all the bags are addressed to. The same Eric that the Foundation currently believes also drew the picture that acts as the vector for the dangerous anomalous effects of SCP-683. Also, in case you were wondering, the 3 chocolate chip cookies are completely non-anomalous, so at least there's that as a consolation prize. Through extensive D-class testing, which has resulted in a lot of deaths and an equal number of sack lunches manifesting in the refrigerator, the Foundation has at least discovered some interesting details about the mechanisms by which this strange and frightening anomaly works. For one, burning the art doesn't seem to activate the effects of the anomaly, though like with removing the drawing manually, it always reappeared back on the fridge within 68 hours of first being removed, even when destroyed. Because of the human body's natural inclination against self-destruction, many of the D-classes used in these tests have refused to eat food for the purposes of testing, opting instead for the starvation route, though this in itself has given the Foundation some interesting avenues for testing. When the subjects passed out, they were intubated and fed intravenously. By doing this, the Foundation found that this causes flesh to disappear just like consuming solid food does. In the end, Eric needs to get his morbid lunch one way or another. At this point, the mysterious Eric is considered a person of interest by the SCP Foundation, if he is indeed just one person. Rather unnervingly, the Foundation knows almost nothing about this enigmatic figure, aside from the fact that he's already associated with 2 other anomalies, SCP-066, also known as Eric's Toy, and SCP-168, also known as the Sentient Calculator. And while SCP-168 has remained harmless, if admittedly a little sassy, SCP-066 has shown serious potential for danger when provoked. 066 was originally a harmless ball of yarn that responded in a number of polymorphic ways to different audio stimuli, such as music, but after a Foundation experiment that involved cutting away a piece of its yarn, it became actively violent towards anyone who approached it. This appears to be a running theme with many of the anomalies associated with Eric. They can appear harmless, even whimsical, but if you make the mistake of attacking, or in the case of SCP-683, even belittling them, there will be hell to pay for your indiscretions. Because of the potential danger that can befall people for even daring to make a negative comment about the illustration on the refrigerator, it's been given the Euclid containment class, reserved for anomalies that react unpredictably in a containment scenario. It's kept in a standard issue 8x8x5 meter containment chamber at Research Bay Zingiber 4 in Site 19, perpetually attached to a gas-powered generator to keep the refrigerator itself running. The fridge is also covered in a large, opaque drop cloth, with the intention of stopping anyone from accidentally removing the drawing during tests and incurring the deadly consequences as a result. The chamber around the fridge is reinforced with a steel door with reinforced hinges and an SCP keycard access system with a manual override. Because of the risk that even potentially seeing the art, and thus being able to comment on it, poses, there are no windows into the cell. The security cameras focus only on the exterior door, and security guards need to be at level 3 or above in clearance. No food or drink is permitted within 20 meters of the containment chamber. You really just can't take any chances with this cursed refrigerator where E. coli is the least of your worries. In our internet age, it's easier than ever before to toss around comments and critiques at everything in sight. Just check the comments under this video if you need any examples. But the dangers presented by SCP-683 remind us to think a little before we speak our mind at a work of art. After all, you never know when the art's listening.
The scientist pulls his hand away sharply, unable to believe his own eyes. There's no way he just saw what he thinks he did. The dog's fur couldn't have moved on its own. Perhaps it was just his gentle stroke over her coat, her skin shifting beneath, or... No, it's a trick of the light. It has to have been. How else do you explain it? The dog sits, unfazed, clearly the same as she's always been. But a whimper reaches the scientist's ear. Even a man with the strongest willpower in the world would have felt his heart melt at the sound. She wants to be petted again, and her owner quickly obliges her. Even she's unaware what's wrong with her, what's been living with her since they returned from their trip. The scientist offers another light, cautious pet, but the dog isn't satisfied with such a meager offering. She whines again, letting him know she still hasn't received enough affection. So he reaches his hand out a third time and pats it against her fur. The dog lowers her head, resting it against his knee where he sits, contented. Under his palm, her owner tussles her smooth, well-groomed coat until he feels something tiny lash at his hand. It only lasts a split second, a fraction of a moment of time, but he feels it. A quick sensation, like touching the barb of a bee's stinger, if only for less time than it takes the clock on the wall to tick. Then, it's gone, departing as quickly as it arrived, save for the echoes of a tiny pain in the seconds that follow, each punctuated by the sound of the clock. The scientist looks at his palm, still feeling it, or feeling its absence, he isn't sure. But as far as his eyes can tell, there's nothing there. He looks at his dog, leans closer to her to see her fur, while cautiously putting a reassuring hand on her back. And this time, he's close enough to see them move. Shifting, slithering, bristling among the dog's hide, enough of them together that their individual movement is clear to see with the naked eye. It takes the scientist a moment to realize his other hand, the one he'd pet his dog with, had gone to his mouth in disbelief. Now they were living on him, too. Over the months that pass, he's never once aware just how many there are. He never notices, shaving, trimming as usual, without so much as a hair seeming out of place. Then he and his colleague, the expert, start looking deeper through microscopes at samples gathered from his dog. That's when he sees them for the first time. Dozens, too many to count. After that, he dreams of them, of tiny pinpricks burrowing into his skin at night, clawing deeper, one by one, until he too is just as covered in them as the dog. Dreams about them, or feels them. After they make their findings known, a rush of activity follows. The Foundation and the questions. They want to know all about the parasites. The scientist tells them to ask the expert. He just discovered them by accident. His colleague knows more about things too small to see. Then, one day, after dozens spent answering the same questions over and over again, the scientist is told by the Foundation that he's being taken elsewhere, somewhere he can help them in their efforts to understand the parasites. It's only when he wakes up, laying strapped to the vivisection table, that he realizes what his help will entail. The surgeons try their best to calm him, but the scientist can't stop screaming. They offer platitudes and false promises that everything will be all right as they pin down his flailing arms in their restraints. The scalpels mark out segments that are then pulled away and put in jars, samples taken to be examined under a microscope. Still, the scientist screams, because now he understands. They're living on him now, too. They're living under his skin. The SCP Foundation has since given this parasitic species the designation of SCP-189, known colloquially among personnel as the aptly descriptive hair-imitating parasite, or sometimes abbreviated as Parasite. By expanding on the research conducted by Dr. F and Dr. W, researchers working at the Foundation have successfully been able to observe and track the behavior of these parasites. Analysis has revealed SCP-189 is a type of parasitic roundworm that is capable of manifesting in any mammalian life form from dogs and cats to human beings. These parasites, as their colloquial name suggests, are capable of implanting themselves into a creature's body by camouflaging themselves as individual hairs, making them difficult to detect until it's too late. The infection process of SCP-189 typically begins when an uninfected mammal comes into direct contact with a creature carrying the hair-imitating parasites. A potential new host needs to be within close enough range to SCP-189 egg sacs in order for transmission to take place. These egg sacs require direct skin-to-skin contact, as each one is covered in a series of microscopic hooks. These hooks bear some similarities to those found on the cuticles of certain species of nematodes, small, worm-like parasites either found in animals and plants, living in soil, freshwater or marine environments, and occasionally even in vinegar, beer malts, and inside water-filled cracks deep within the Earth's crust. Upon making contact with an uninfected mammal, the SCP-189 egg sacs will become anchored to the surface of a new host's skin via those microscopic hooks. These eggs do, however, require a specific catalyst to hatch. Rather than new SCP-189 parasites being born the moment the egg sacs transfer onto skin, they won't emerge until coming into contact with a specific substance, sebum. Unfortunately, sebum is most commonly found in skin, produced by sebaceous glands beneath the surface of the skin where hair follicles are present. Sebum is an oily substance that prevents skin from drying out and plays a vital role in maintaining a healthy skin barrier. While excess sebum can be cleared through a thorough skincare routine of cleaning and moisturizing, this does little to deter infections of SCP-189. Sebum will prompt anchored egg sacs to hatch, at which point the larvae inside will emerge and burrow into nearby hair follicles. Given the tiny, unobservable size of both the egg sacs and the emergent hairistic larvae, it is impossible to feel an SCP-189 infection as it occurs. Once burrowed beneath the skin inside a hair follicle, an SCP-189 larva will latch itself onto the base of the dermal papilla, beneath the root of a hair, located under the skin. Papilla are fed by capillaries, the smallest and most delicate blood vessels of the vascular system. These transport blood, nutrients, and oxygen to the various cells and mammalian organs and bodily systems, including supplying the papilla with the necessary ingredients to stimulate hair growth. Despite exactly how this has occurred, SCP-189 larvae have evolved to use the capillaries as a food source, as it grows over the course of 2 to 3 days. After this point, the now adult SCP-189 instance will have grown large enough to detach itself from the papilla. The fully matured worm will sever the hair fiber and essentially uproot an existing hair to quickly and discreetly take its place. As a fully developed adult SCP-189 instance, the parasite will fully envelop the papilla and the surrounding hair matrix, and then from that point onwards will feed on cells that are shed by the hair matrix. While these cells would, in an uninfected subject, form the hair fiber itself, an SCP-189 worm will use these to continuously grow longer without the subject's knowledge. Currently, SCP Foundation researchers are still baffled by how exactly this species of roundworm could have evolved, given how seamlessly it exploits the ordinary cellular behaviors of human beings and other mammals. Some theories among personnel suggest that SCP-189 was originally specifically biologically engineered to harness and feed on the typical hair-growing process by someone with an in-depth knowledge of how this bodily function occurs. There is, however, no evidence to support this notion. and staff are discouraged from speculating that these parasites were created intentionally via any anomalous means. While the remainder of the parasite exists beneath the skin, the only visible part of an adult SCP-189 instance is the worm's tail that extrudes outwards from the hair follicle inhabited by the parasite. The tail, resembling a hair, is able to camouflage itself by absorbing the pigments and keratin from the cells the parasite consumes. Keratin especially, as this is the protein that helps with the healthy growth of hair, as well as nails and the epidermis, the skin's outer layer. SCP-189 uses the body's natural keratin to form an outer cuticle, a thin protective layer that matches the pigmentation of an infected subject's hair. This allows for the parasites to avoid detection, as they are not only able to match the color of their host's hair, but the extruding tail of an SCP-189 worm is similar in diameter and length to a hair that would normally grow out of the follicle the parasite is burrowed into. Visually, this makes SCP-189 instances indistinguishable from normal hairs unless inspected more closely through the use of a microscope. Otherwise, a subject that has contracted an SCP-189 infection will be completely unaware that they are carrying an anomalous parasite, apart from other certain circumstances. For reasons that the Foundation is still yet to understand, while most instances of SCP-189 remain undetectable and are indistinguishable from hair, others will occasionally move independently. Some specimens of SCP-189 worms have been observed flexing their tails, coiling or uncoiling, and lashing their hair-like extrusions in response to certain tactile stimulation. It is unclear why some instances of these parasites will seemingly attack other organisms, and this behavior has only been observed in a handful of specimens. Some Foundation experts in anomalous parasitology have suggested that the movements could be an involuntary response by the parasites to external stimuli, while others argue that it only occurs when an SCP-189 instance is threatened. Certain other proposed explanations for these movements have been expunged from the SCP Foundation Archive's entry on SCP-189. Unfortunately for those infected, and alarmingly for those who have observed them, SCP-189 infections are in no way benign. Far from it, actually, as instead of simply nestling under the skin and feeding on cells indefinitely, once SCP-189 parasites reach adulthood, they will begin the next phase of their life cycle. Similarly to other documented species of roundworms, SCP-189 instances are capable of creating and fertilizing their own eggs, producing between 1 and 3 at a time, which are then contained within a protective egg sac ready to be passed on to the next available host. The egg sacs themselves are similarly difficult to detect, as they are incorporated into the extruding tail that extends from beneath the skin. Once they become part of the hair-like tail, the egg sacs will develop their microscopic hooks as they mature. Then, once the tail grows to over 1 millimeter above the surface of the host's skin, they will be primed to pass on to a new subject. Fully developed SCP-189 egg sacs are loosely embedded in the tail's cuticle, and once they come into contact with the surface of a suitable host, its hooks will latch onto their skin and allow it to be pulled free from its parent. However, this process doesn't exclusively result in SCP-189 egg sacs passing from one host to the next. If the hooks are able to embed themselves in the skin of the current, existing host, then these unhatched larvae will spread onto the original subject, allowing the parasites to further infest a single mammal if they are unable to transfer it to a new host. Now, Foundation researchers have discovered that SCP-189's camouflage, appearing as ordinary hair, can be used against these parasites. As one might expect, the tails that extrude from a host's skin aren't any thicker or more durable than ordinary hair. Similarly, the head, buried beneath the skin in the hair follicle, is not attached any stronger than the root of an ordinary hair. This means that, provided the Foundation are able to identify an SCP-189 infection before the worm produces eggs and either spreads or further infects the host, there is the possibility for the parasites to be removed. Much like the hair it imitates, the parasite's tail can be broken or cut off, or the entire organism can be plucked out, or otherwise removed in the same way that ordinary hair can be. Once severed, the tail portion of an adult SCP-189 parasite can regenerate, growing a new head, becoming a separate instance of the worm. However, this is only possible if they are able to attach to a new host. Otherwise, they will starve and expire without access to capillaries of cells to feed on. Given that instances of SCP-189 that have their tails cut off can simply regrow this part of themselves, extraction of the entire organism is recommended by the SCP Foundation's trichology experts. hair follicles containing active SCP-189 parasites can all die, owing to completely natural causes and conditions that can trigger hair loss. Any event that causes the loss of a follicle's hair similarly removes an SCP-189 parasite, forcing them to detach from their hosts, after which point they will usually die within an hour, although can last as long as 6 while separated from their previous host. Even dead adult instances of SCP-189 can pose an infection risk, though, as the eggs that they produce can remain viable for several years, meaning even if a new subject comes into direct contact with the deceased SCP-189 worm, its egg sac can still embed its hooks into their skin and pass on the parasitic infection. By far the most alarming characteristic of SCP-189 are their effects on an already dead mammal. Even if a host dies, SCP-189 specimens will continue to survive and feed on what is left of the creature's body by burrowing into their tissues. This can allow the parasites to continue to produce eggs and spread over the corpse, however, only until the deceased host begins to decay. Once this inevitable process begins, SCP-189 worms are killed by the toxins produced as the body breaks down post-mortem. However, they are still able to pass on to any that come into contact with the corpse before decay begins. In cases of SCP-189 infections in humans, coroners and morticians examining and handling bodies carrying the parasites quickly become the new host for parasite larvae. While their name has been expunged from Foundation records, the doctor responsible for the discovery of the SCP-189 parasites certainly wouldn't be quick to forget what they had uncovered. During a 6-month trip to a remote area of rainforest in a redacted part of the world, Dr. F was intending to spend the duration of their time focused on their biodiversity study, and they would have had it not been for Kara. 3 years old at the time, Kara was Dr. F's pet golden retriever and had been brought along by her owner to join the expedition. During the trip, Kara became infected with numerous instances of SCP-189. As far as records indicate, Kara was the first known infectee of this rare species of parasite. This initially went unnoticed by Dr. F, who eventually returned to the United States with Kara alongside them. By this time, it was estimated that approximately 80% of the dog's hair follicles had been infested with the parasites. Human beings possess 5 million hair follicles over their bodies, equating to between 1,800 and 3,000 hairs per inch. On average, a dog can have 15,000 strands of hair per inch of skin. Several days after making their return to the United States, Dr. F noticed while petting Kara that the retriever's fur was moving, or more accurately, the parasites were. And the close contact likely passed on multiple instances of SCP-189 to the doctor. Recognizing the abnormal infection, Dr. F contacted a parasitologist, whose name is similarly redacted from Foundation files. Dr. W received an invitation to study the newly discovered organism, and alongside Dr. F, the two submitted an academic paper detailing their findings. Upon receiving word of this paper, the SCP Foundation became aware of the existence of SCP-189 and responded by arresting both Dr. F and Dr. W. The pair were taken into Foundation custody, and their research materials, anything linking to SCP-189, were seized to prevent knowledge of these parasites being available to the public. While for some, being taken into custody by the SCP Foundation would likely be the last anyone ever heard from them, both Dr. F and Dr. W were instead recruited. Both became affiliated with the Foundation, and Dr. W was assigned to be the lead researcher in charge of SCP-189, given their background in parasitology. They were stationed in an undisclosed location to investigate indigenous populations of SCP-189 and determine solutions for their containment or extermination. Dr. F's whereabouts have been expunged from Foundation records. Presently, the Foundation has several samples of SCP-189 that it keeps stored at a classified cryogenic containment facility. Any samples kept at this facility that exceed an amount the Foundation is able to contain safely are to be destroyed via incineration immediately. Test subjects who have been infected with the parasite are kept in a sealed containment chamber with an airlock and chemical shower. Personnel that interact with these infected test subjects are required to wear standard NBC hazmat suits during their time inside, and must undergo a chemical shower before exiting the airlock and leaving the area. Whenever test subjects die, whether through the natural result of their infection or by termination, their bodies must be sealed in an airtight body bag, which will then be put through the same chemical shower prior to removal from the chamber. Then it is to be thrown into the incinerator.
Should these containment measures fail, and a staff member find themselves unintentionally infested with SCP-189, they are to be quarantined in the same manner as test subjects and treated with anti-parasitic agent 189-A. If any human or animal at a Foundation site is determined to have an infestation of SCP-189, every living being on site must be inspected according to procedure. Staff members should then be treated, while D-Class and non-SCP animals must be terminated and incinerated, after which the facility is to be cleaned thoroughly with anti-parasitic agent 189-A. Cases of SCP-189 found outside of the Foundation must be taken into custody and quarantined immediately. Animals are to be euthanized and their bodies incinerated, while humans may be treated with the anti-parasitic agent and administered Class C or B amnestics. Individuals who have been or may have been in close contact with the infected must be checked for infestation and treated if necessary. A document containing suitable cover stories may be provided upon request, and can include covers such as gas leaks, bedbug infestations, and outbreaks of bird flu. Since the initial discovery of SCP-189 and the Foundation becoming subsequently aware of their existence, there have been numerous infestation incidents documented in various parts of the world. The source of infections outside of the SCP Foundation remains unknown. Theories range from the presumed existence of a previously unseen group of carriers transmitting the hair-imitating parasites to new infectees, or some other shared point of origin for these parasites, with some researchers suggesting there could exist a patient zero for infections, or an organism capable of spawning more instances of SCP-189, similarly to a queen in some insect populations. A considerable number of human beings and animals have been confirmed to have contracted one or more SCP-189 instances. The Foundation is working tirelessly to monitor outbreaks and ensure that the public remains unaware that there could be anomalous parasites living in their scalps.
There's a blood-curdling scream rattling inside the ice cream truck, blood on the metal. The child is terrified, and his terror only increases when the hatch opens and a long, fleshy appendage reaches out. For a child, there's nothing quite like the thrill of summer vacation. The long, sun-soaked days of doing cannonballs into the pool, running through sprinklers, riding bikes until the sun sets and the fireflies fill the air with twinkling lights. Coming home with hair stringy from swimming pool chlorine, faces smeared with sunscreen, hands sticky from too many popsicles. Their parents call it a mess. They call it freedom. And if the freedom of summer vacation had one sound, a theme song perhaps, it would be the music of the ice cream truck. That cheerful melody, the siren song summoning every kid with a pocket full of change and a taste for frozen treats. All over the country, children pool their allowance money and spoil their appetites for dinner whenever that special truck rolls into the neighborhood. And this neighborhood is no exception. All of the kids cried and mourned the previous summer when the ice cream truck driver who had served the area for 30 years tragically hung up his hat and retired. They worried that there would be no ice cream truck at all this summer. But wishes do come true, and the first evening of the summer, a music box rendition of Pop Goes the Weasel serenades the neighborhood, signaling the return of the beloved truck. As they gather around, fistfuls of cash in hand, the crowd of kids can't help but notice that this truck is a bit different. There are no colorful pictures of the truck's various offerings emblazoned on the side, no prices either. Most notably, there's no driver, at least not one that they can see. But when the first brave child, a little girl, steps up to the side of the van and asks for a chocolate-dipped cone, a slot opens and out comes her order. She pays the same price she paid for her ice cream the previous summer, and that's the entirety of the transaction. With the seal broken and the van proven to be a genuine ice cream truck, the other kids line up to place orders of their own. As they do, one small group of boys stands off to the side, speaking in hushed whispers. There's something funny about this new ice cream truck, something they don't quite trust. Why isn't there a driver? Why does it look so unusual? One boy suggests that the truck is haunted, driven by the ghost of a former ice cream man. Another argues that it must be some kind of robot, a self-driving truck with an automated ice cream dispensing system. The third boy insists that there is a driver. He's just hiding, for some reason. There's only one way to know for sure. They'll have to wait until everyone else is gone and try to get a look inside.
While the rest of the neighborhood's children are ordering and enjoying their ice cream, the three boys run home to collect supplies for their special investigation. They reconvene in one boy's garage, across the street from where the ice cream truck is still idling and serving its line of customers. One boy found a firecracker swiped from his older brother. The other grabbed a disposable camera for capturing proof of whatever they discover. The third has procured the most important tool of the mission, a crowbar taken from the toolbox in his father's shed. Now, with all of their equipment assembled, the three boys are ready to uncover the secret of the ice cream truck. They watch from a distance until the only remaining customer has walked away from the truck. The engine revs, and just before the truck can pull away, the boy with the camera runs up to the side. He'll serve as the distraction. He holds up several dollar bills and asks for a deluxe hot fudge sundae. While whatever is inside of the truck is preparing the ice cream, the other two boys sneak around to the side of the van. They take the crowbar and place it in the crack between the doors. They apply as much pressure as possible, but it won't budge. But they're not about to give up now. They take a deep breath, summoning all of their strength, and try again. With a soft pop, the door comes open. The two boys glance at each other, eyes wide with excitement. They did it. Now, time to go inside. Quietly, carefully, they sneak into the shadowy back of the van. Meanwhile, on the other side of the truck, the boy with the camera receives his order and places the cash into the delivery slot. As he waits for his change, he suddenly hears a strange sound, a deep, rumbling growl emanating from within the van. The van begins to shake, and the boy can hear two voices screaming in terror. He recognizes the voices immediately as those of his friends. They must be in trouble. He runs around to the other side just in time to see the horrified face of one of his friends. The boy reaches out for him, trying to escape from whatever is inside of the ice cream truck. But just as their hands almost touch, an unseen force yanks the boy back inside. The door slams closed, and the screams go silent. Where there were previously three boys, now there is just one, standing alone, holding an ice cream sundae. The engine rumbles, and the truck drives away, leaving the remaining boy in its dust. His friends are both gone without a trace. But wait, what's that? On the ground, where the truck just was, is a small slip of receipt paper. The boy picks it up and reads the message scrawled on it in messy handwriting. It says, "Please come again, but make sure to follow the rules." On the back, there's a crude drawing of two young boys, eyes wide, mouths open in an endless scream. What was meant as an innocent expression of childish curiosity has ended in disaster after these boys unknowingly provoked SCP-1386. SCP-1386 is a white ice cream truck that appears to belong to the Good Humor brand. The truck's physical condition is poor, and unlike other trucks of its kind, it does not feature any images or descriptions of the products that it sells. The van drives itself without a person behind the wheel, and none of its doors or windows open via conventional means. This detail has led the Foundation to conclude that the van is sapient. Like most ice cream trucks, the van plays music, alternating between Pop Goes the Weasel and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. These songs will play 24 hours a day and alternate every 4 hours. On a few occasions, it has been observed playing a version of Green Sleeves, but as soon as a customer is detected, it will switch to one of the other two songs. SCP-1386 has a thin slot in the middle of its driver's side door, which can only be seen when it dispenses an ice cream product after making a sale. After the ice cream has been dispensed, a small slip of receipt paper will slide out with the price written in very sloppy but legible handwriting. Payment is given to the van through the same slot it uses to deliver ice cream. Once it has been paid, the van will simply drive away. The prices and flavors of the ice cream products offered by the van change daily. The van appears to never run out of stock on a given day, no matter how many orders it receives. In order to explore the nature of SCP-1386's products and, let's face it, to indulge in an all-too-rare sweet treat, the SCP Foundation conducted a series of tests. After thoroughly reviewing the official test log, I have assembled some of the most notable entries. On March 30th, 2012, two Foundation doctors, referred to in the file by the initials R and D respectively, placed their orders with the ice cream truck. They each requested 1 cookies and cream smoothie, and they received their orders without incident. The receipt was for $4.89, and the bill was swiftly paid. The smoothies were described as pretty good, though one doctor insisted he had had better. On April 1, 2012, Dr. D placed an order for 1 Neapolitan ice cream sandwich. A few seconds later, the van dispensed an item. However, it did not resemble any ice cream sandwich that he had ever seen. It appeared, instead, to be a meat and cheese sandwich with a slice of tomato. Curious, D took a bite and found that the sandwich was, in fact, made out of chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry ice cream. It was a sandwich made from Neapolitan ice cream. Shortly after Dr. D tasted the sandwich, the van spat out a receipt. There was no price listed, only a simple message: April Fools. As Dr. D read the message, the van sped away, leaving him bemused, novelty ice cream in hand. The next notable test occurred on April 17, 2012. Dr. F ordered a single peach push pop and promptly received it, along with the receipt that demanded $16.27 for the treat. Dr. F scoffed at what he deemed an absurd price for only 1 push pop, and rather than pay the full cost, he inserted $3.75 worth of quarters into the van. Then he attempted to walk away. Well, the van was having none of it. A slot opened in the door of SCP-1386, approximately 6 feet in height. Then, a large rusted steel trap emerged, grabbing hold of Dr. F and dragging him inside. The slot slammed shut, and the usual ice cream delivery slot began to spew a sludgy pink substance for 5 minutes before driving away. A sample of the substance was taken for analysis, and it was found to be made up of blood, skin tissue, and bone fragments, all of which were a DNA match for Dr. F. After this incident, only D-Class personnel were permitted to interact with SCP-1386. On April 27, 2012, a D-Class ordered a cherry popsicle from the van, adding 1 request: with nuts. The van waited several seconds, then produced 1 cherry popsicle, unwrapped, studded with crushed peanuts. The receipt read, $2.20, your nuts. The D-Class chuckled to himself, then paid the van before it sped away without further incident. On April 30, 2012, the D-Class chosen for testing was a bit more adventurous with his order. He requested a Caesar salad flavor popsicle. After a few moments, the van filled the unusual order, dispensing a popsicle that was off-green in color and was reported to taste like lightly dressed lettuce with a hint of croutons. The cost was $4.56, and there were no complications. On May 4, 2012, the selected D-Class ordered a dark chocolate fudge pop. The receipt produced read $1.38. The transaction would not be notable if it weren't for the fact that the test subject chose to pay with 2 single-dollar bills. This would make it the first transaction under Foundation observation that required change. After the 2 bills were inserted, SCP-1386 made a sound like a cash register, then produced a small, wrapped package. On the front of the package was a hand-drawn image of various American coins. Once the D-Class had the package in his hands, the van drove away. At Dr. J's instruction, the test subject opened the package. Inside, he found 62 cents in American currency. The coins were analyzed and found to be completely ordinary and completely safe. The D-Class asked if he could keep his change. The request was denied. As the experiments progressed, the test subjects became increasingly creative with their menu choices. On May 10, 2012, the D-Class test subject asked the van for an ice cream Kinder Egg, unsure of exactly what that would be. The treat cost $3.87, and the van promptly dispensed an item that looked very much like an ordinary Kinder Egg, but was made from a coffee ice cream coating and a French vanilla ice cream interior. There was no toy inside, but there was, however, a handwritten note reading, "I owe you 1 toy." On May 16, 2012, the D-Class requested the following items in order: 1 cherry ice lolly, 1 cherry ice pop, 1 cherry popsicle, and 1 cherry-flavored drink, frozen. After receiving the order, the van began to emit a distressing sound. The test subject described it as a real unnerving sound, like someone skinning a cat in reverse.
The sound continued for several seconds before the slot opened and several unwrapped red sticks of ice shot out at a high velocity, landing on the pavement and shattering there. A few moments later, a large styrofoam cup was dispensed containing an unidentified, frozen green liquid. The test subject asked the van, "What do I owe you?" But the van gave no response. Instead, it drove away. Pieces of the red ice shards were taken in for analysis and were found to consist of 2 parts water, 1 part red food dye, and 1 part arsenic. The contents of the cup could not be identified, but the substance was observed to have a melting point so high that it could not be thawed by any available means. The cup and the strange green substance therein have been held for further examination. Personally, I find it unlikely that any of its secrets will be uncovered. It is uncertain what might have driven the van to act up in this manner, but it is my theory that the combination of 3 different synonyms for popsicle in the same order caused the van to become confused, then distressed, and then angry. As for the unmeltable substance in the cup, well, I certainly wouldn't drink it. For the next experiment, the research team decided to test a new procedure when it came to placing ice cream orders. The selected D-class was a mute, but able to write. Rather than speaking their desired purchase aloud, they ordered a vanilla cone in chocolate via a message written using a pencil and paper. Then, they raised the paper toward the van, holding it in the spot where the dispensing slot normally appeared. After 1 full minute had passed, a slot opened, 3 inches lower than the usual one. Next, something emerged from the slot, a thin, flesh-colored appendage which grabbed the paper and slid back into the van and out of sight, closing the slot behind it. A few moments later, the usual slot opened and the ice cream was dispensed. The receipt followed, asking for 97 cents in exchange for the treat. The price was paid without further incident, and the D-class test subject was interviewed. They responded in sign language, their hands trembling in fear as they recounted the experience. The transcription of their statement is as follows. It was a hand, not human, 2 fingers and a thumb. It was bony like a dead body, and it smelled. It smelled dead. They refused to eat the ice cream they had ordered, explaining that they had lost their appetite. Naturally, this development piqued the research team's curiosity, and they were eager to explore the nature of this hand further. On May 30th, 2012, personnel D5 was selected for testing and ordered to repeat the same steps when placing their order. It should be noted that D5 was not mute. I attribute any changes in the experimental result to this factor, but that's just my opinion. D5 wrote down his ice cream of choice and handed it to the van. Again, the lower slot opened and the flesh-colored appendage emerged. The ice cream cost 86 cents and the bill was paid without any trouble. As he ate his ice cream, D5 was questioned about the appendage he had seen. He was far more nonchalant about it than his predecessor had been, stating, "I don't see what they were getting all worked up about. It's just a hand, you know? There's probably just some guy in there handing out ice cream. Sure, it's weird, but what here isn't?" On June 4th, 2012, the same experiment was repeated again. Personnel D2, who was also not mute, wrote down his request for a banana sundae with hot fudge and handed it to the van. Again, the second slot opened and the fleshy hand emerged to take the order. D2 had nothing notable to say about the transaction, with one exception. He insisted that there had to be a person inside the van, explaining, "There's got to be somebody in there. I could swear I heard somebody cough like they had a cold or something." The researcher conducting the interview brought up the subject of the hand, and D2 shrugged. "Look," he said, "it's just not that big of a deal, just a hand. Got all 5 fingers, looked healthy, certainly not dead or whatever. B's just lost it. Never trusted that guy much anyway." B, in this case, referred to the mute D-class from the previous test. There is one more date in the test log, but rather than an experiment, it catalogs a development that I find deeply troubling. On June 6, 2012, personnel D7, the aforementioned mute test subject, was found dead in their holding block at 7:40. The time of death was determined to be approximately 4:30. They did not share a cell with anyone else, and there were no signs of forced entry. However, the cause of death was strangulation, complete with light bruising on the neck. This is speculation, but I am willing to bet you the cost of a deluxe banana split that, if examined closely, those bruises would match a hand with only 2 fingers and a thumb.
SCP-1386 is kept in an evacuated 4-block neighborhood surrounded by a 10-meter-high reinforced concrete containment wall. This area is located 8 kilometers from the nearest inhabited neighborhood. In the aftermath of some unfortunate incidents, the containment procedures were updated to include constant surveillance. Additionally, the area may only be approached by D-Class personnel. Any individual that does approach SCP-1386 within a 3-meter radius must put on the appearance of happiness. For example, smiling or laughing regardless of one's current emotional state has proven to be effective. If the subject is approached by someone that does not appear to be happy, it will growl, refusing to engage positively until the individual appears friendly. If a member of Foundation personnel is going to make contact with SCP-1386, they are strongly advised to have at least $20 USD on hand, and where the entity can see it. If SCP-1386 is approached by someone that does not have a currency available, a siren will begin to emit from its undercarriage for the next 24 hours, at a frequency that causes bleeding of the inner ear. So far, all attempts to silence this siren have been unsuccessful. Once the siren has started, SCP-1386 will refuse to move until the 24-hour period is up. Any attempts to interact with SCP-1386 while the siren is active will increase the intensity and volume of the sound. As with any anomaly that I research, I find myself inclined to speculate a bit on the nature of SCP-1386. A self-driving ice cream van that only wants to hand out frozen treats to anyone willing to pay for them sounds more like the subject of a children's book than a standard SCP Foundation anomaly. But of course, as we've seen, it is not quite as cheerful as it first appears. Whatever consciousness is inside of SCP-1386, it does not appreciate being mocked or toyed with. It has no tolerance for anyone behaving in a manner that it does not approve of, and will punish that behavior accordingly. And God forbid you order an ice cream and then refuse to eat it. Though it could be that the refusal to eat the ice cream is not what doomed that unfortunate D-Class. Perhaps it was that they simply saw too much, knew too much. Maybe getting a proper look at that arm is what sentenced them to death alone in their cell. Perhaps it's best that the identity of the thing inside the van remain a secret. After all, if we learn too much, I can almost guarantee that we would all scream for ice cream. Check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-7783. Dissolve your body today.